Okay, I think we're ready to get started here. Madam City Clerk, can we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Paul,
Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, I'm sorry. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody rise. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, now we can have the roll call.
Councilmember Paul,
Here.
Councilmember Sinks,
Here.
Councilmember Willie, here. Vice Mayor Chow,
Here.
Mayor Scharf.
Here. Okay, our first item, I want to report out on closed session. We had a public employee performance evaluation under Government Code Section 54957 for the city attorney, no reportable action. And now we are on to ceremonial matters, presenting the award to Cupertino resident Vishnu Athrey from St. Andrew's Episcopal School for winning the Calaxia Build Your Bot contest. And this was supposed to be last meeting, but something happened, and so it's postponed till today. So, would you like to speak?
Yes, I'm Raji Mahalingam. I'm one of the co-founders of A Carrot Inc. The product is Calaxia. It's a galaxy of question and answers. And we are very proud to have put out this contest for Build Your Own Bot. And Vishnu is our grand prize winner. Out of about 21 kids, his bot answered most of the questions about the city of Cupertino. That was the question. Any question you put out there about the city of Cupertino, and his bot needs to be answering it. So we are very proud to award this prize, and especially honored that the city of Cupertino's mayor is going to do the honors. Thank you.
So did he bring the bot with him? Because I have a question for him.
It's online. Just go to
Okay.
www.calaxia.com.
Okay.
And if you ask a question about the city of Cupertino, it is most likely going to be his bot that is going to answer.
Great. What's
Thank
happening
you.
with Valco? Okay. That's my question. Okay, so can we get the whole council to come up and present the award? Oh, I thought you were giving it to me.
You should be giving it to us. You should be funding us.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations. Well done, Vishnu. Well done. Madam City Clerk, are there any postponements?
There are no postponements, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we are on to oral communications. I have one card. This is for items not on the agenda. Welcome, former Mayor Dolly Sandoval.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. I appreciate you having oral communications this early in the meeting, as we're all still closely paying attention. A couple weeks I came and spoke to the council for the first time in many years, and I spoke on an issue regarding one of your planning commissioners, the chair of the planning commission, Ray Wong, and his attitude and actions towards people who come and speak at planning commission meetings that have a different point of view than he has. And at that point, I spoke to you a little bit about going after one's employer to kind of get even with a disagreement he may have with a speaker at the podium is not okay. And I was hoping that during that interim time that you would also, as a body, agree that it's not okay, and that you would hold our public servants that you appointed to this position to a very high standard of treating the public with respect. I could be wrong on this because school started and it's kind of been a up and down rock and roll time at school the first 6 weeks, as you can imagine. But I'm pretty sure you have not taken this action up to discuss his appointment. Is that correct? Because if you have, then I'll just step back. Okay, I don't think you have.
Right, during oral communications, we're not, you know the rule.
Yes, I
Better than
do.
anyone.
I do. So let me just speak for a couple more moments here. Although the 3-minute timer never went off. But to be a public servant is all about serving the public good. The first idea that public servants are simply those professionals who want to achieve advancement is not a public servant. The public good above all else is what they should be aspiring to help. These are people who are on balance, value their organizations, their careers, and do business in public for the public. And I think in public, for the public, as a public servant, that means listening to the public. You can certainly disagree with the public that comes before you on any item and vote for or against whatever viewpoints you hear from the podium. But you should not disenfranchise the public, in my view, because you disagree with them so wholeheartedly. A public servant is committed to treating all members of the public with equality and fairness. The public servant should be exercising courage in the fulfillment of those duties. The courage to take a position, to speak objectively, and to take responsibility before the body it serves. A public servant should respect the public. So I would ask you to consider that appointment that you made for the chair of the Planning Commission and consider whether that planning commissioner is actually serving the public well and with respect and with fairness. Because you've decided not to take this issue up yet, I have some hope that you will, and that you'll seriously consider whether the types of public servants that you have appointed are actually serving the public with respect. I also appreciate the little extra time here since you have now set the clock. I won't take the rest of this time, but I certainly hope that in the very near future, you take a change of heart from your past action and you put this on the agenda and you discuss the activities of the chair of the Planning Commission. Thank you very much for hearing me, and I look forward to seeing that on the agenda soon, as good public servants as you are.
Okay, thank you, Dolly. Any other cards?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, that's it for oral communications. We're on to reports by council and staff. This is a report on committee assignments. Councilmember Willie.
No committee assignment this week, but I would like to just say that I did talk to Commissioner Wang, and I told him that I see all city commissioners as ambassadors to the city, and my position is he and all commissioners and all city councilmen represent all residents of the community. And he thanked me, and what I heard was he is raising the bar. So, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Paul.
I have two committee assignments to report out on. Last Thursday on September 12th, there was a VTA Policy Advisory Committee meeting. There were a number of items that were covered by the representatives of the various cities of Santa Clara County for the PAC, and included in that was the recent grand jury report regarding the composition and the makeup of the board of the VTA. So we did have a discussion about that. Our city has recently issued a letter per the grand jury's instructions, and the other cities did as well. So that should be interesting to see what happens with respect to that. I should say that VTA's position itself was that, essentially they disagree with the crux of what the grand jury was saying, that some differences need to happen going forward with regard to how the board is composed. But I think, there are varying opinions on that, and we'll see how that develops over time. I wasn't able to make the entirety of that meeting because there was a bit of a conflict with the library working group meeting, which was quite effective. And it was run by our director of the Public Works Department, Roger Lee, as well as our new assistant city manager, Diane. And I thought that it was a really tremendous session. We took a little bit longer than usual. It was a 3-hour session. But the group comprised of members of the Cupertino Library Foundation and the Cupertino Library Commission, myself, other members of the public, were able to identify a number of factors that they found very critical and necessary inside of a library program room expansion, which we hopefully will deliver to you within a reasonable amount of time. So, and in a cost-effective manner, hopefully. Just on a very tangential, brief note, I did have a chance to go back to visit the Midwest this weekend, and the community where I'm from originally, in the city next door, they built a 100,000 square foot recreation center for the price of about $30 million, and that comes out to about $300 a square foot. And our program room is budgeted at more than $2,000 a square foot right now. And I know that it's more expensive here, but I think we can be, doing more to try to see how we can value engineer our projects, which is something that the working group for the library expansion is doing assiduously as well. So, thank you very much.
Okay, the only report I have, the Airport Noise Roundtable, which was 2 weeks ago, and basically all these meetings are the same. All the cities say, please disperse the flights over a wider area so not one group of houses gets all the noise, and which is what used to happen, and the FAA is saying, no, we're not going to do that. And unfortunately, cities can't tell the FAA what to do. We would have to, and we are working through our Congress people and senators to try to get some resolution to this. But to be honest, every meeting is pretty much the same request and the same response. Thank you.
So for the past 2 weeks, I don't have a committee assignment, but then I'd like this Thursday, we will have a CUSD 2x2 meeting at 6 o'clock. And also tomorrow, there is a City Council special meeting on objective standards that the public might want to know. And on Thursday, there is a ABAG meeting on Plain Bay Area 2050, which might be proposing very aggressive job growth model, again, following the same Plain Bay Area 2040 that might worsen gentrification and housing job balance. Yeah. So.
Okay, Councilman Sinks.
Yeah, I agree with Darcy's comment about the importance of value engineering and in the things we want to construct. It's really so important. I know that also heard that VTA wants to come talk to the Cities Association, but it sounds like not to do what some cities have suggested and give us the wherewithal to conduct a study into a better governance model for VTA. It seems like they're fairly dismissive. But we'll see what they say when they come to our meeting. They've only asked for 10 minutes, and I have a feeling it'll turn into a longer discussion. And I'll listen to the extent that they care to, right? Silicon Valley Clean Energy last week, there was a fair amount of discussion about cities moving ahead with REACH codes. That is, codes that would have new buildings be electrified, or primarily electrified, and not necessarily plumbed for gas. In the interest of attaining our greenhouse goals. So I would say a third of the cities or so in the county now have public hearings to adopt those REACH codes scheduled with their councils. San Jose went today with a fairly aggressive proposal, and this is in the wake of Berkeley and Menlo Park taking these actions. They voted today 9-1 to adopt. They actually went more aggressive than the staff report. They went to a proposal that the mayor and 3 other council members penned. So that's that. At the Cities Association, there were 2 weighty topics last week. One had to do with the RENA subregion. You may remember the debate that we had at this council about whether to proceed or not. I would say that this agreement is in tenuous shape right now. We're not quite sure what's going to happen. It's been suggested that we would have to come up with our own methodology and guidelines before the regional body, ABAG, that normally does this work would, and we're struggling with the idea that we would take this on as a region. That means that instead of each city getting a number from ABAG, some regional body here of electeds or staff would have to go figure out how to dole out these numbers and then allow for trades. And I would have to say there was a fair amount of resistance at the meeting to that idea. I think, there are concerns that the system might be gamed. And I suppose you could say the system could be gamed in any case, but we all took it on ourselves to say, those of us who would like to get more input from their councils, and that would include me, ought to do so and then come back in October prepared to say, here are the conditions under which we think we'd really like to participate. It would be an expensive undertaking for us. We don't have the technical expertise, so that could be a request for our next regular meeting before the Cities Association meeting, where we're probably going to have to, due to timing, make a go, no-go on whether to join this RENA or continue the work toward joining the RENA subregion. The other topic was Plan Bay Area 2050, so we spent quite a bit of time on the algorithms on that, and it is a challenging subject, indeed, starting with a kickoff now and methodology, and so it's a several-year process. But I know, we had a lot of discussion about how to appropriately weigh in on that, and I know Liang was there, and I know several of you are tracking what's going on in the region, so I'll leave it at those 2 things. Thank you.
Okay. We are on to consent calendar. Did anybody want to pull any items, either from the staff or the public? Or the council members?
I'd like to pull the item on the option for
Item 8, okay.
design build. Yeah.
Okay.
I will move items 3 through 7 on the consent calendar.
Second.
The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, item 8 is approve the option to use design build procurement for qualifying projects and establish a corresponding conflict of interest limitation pursuant to Public Contract Code, Section 22160.
Thank you.
So can we have a staff report on this, please?
Yes, good evening. Roger Lee, Director of Public Works. What this is we currently deliver projects using what's called the design bid build process. That's a project where, a process where we go through a request for qualifications to hire an architect. And this would be what I'm following on the top of this slide that's in front of you. So we develop that RFQ, we select an architect or an engineer, depending on what type of project it would be. We engage with that consultant. If the contract value is over $175,000, we go to council to get authority to proceed. We come up with 100% design. We then bid the project using a competitive low bid process. Goes to council for award if it's over the 200,000, and then we begin construction. What this item number 8 does on the consent is, instead of using the design bid build, we would use the design build process, where we would engage a design build facilitator, also known as like a requirement document or a bridging architect, to help us come up with preliminary or 30% designs. And once we have that, we develop a request for qualifications for design build contractor. This would be on the lower part here. And then from that, we then select the qualified design build contractors. So this would be based on, let's say, years of experience doing that type of project. And all the while, we're developing these bridging documents that you see up here on the top to that would be the 30%. Then that from the short list of contractors, design build contractors that we select, we would then issue a request for proposals for them to give us a proposal that could be either based on lowest price, best value, not to exceed at this point here. We then would select the contractor, negotiate the fee, goes to council, then we begin construction. Now, what isn't obvious in looking at this slide is the function of time. On the design build process, it does take a little bit more time in the beginning just to get the 30% design up and running. But then what you can do is once you get to construction, you can be continuing the design while you are actually constructing. So there could be an opportunity on some projects to accelerate it by using the design build process. And because you're not being very prescriptive in your design, because you're only taking your plans to 30%, there's an opportunity for the design build contractor to have some ingenuity and other trade advantages that they may have to deliver a project at lower cost. So that is why staff is recommending that we have this as a tool in our toolbox for deliveries. We're not specifying any project right now that would be using this process, and we would do that in the future with council's approval if we were to select one. This just gets that process behind us, because in theory, if you were to use design build, you're trying to get a project delivered quickly and at a low price, and we're just trying to get this in and behind us. This is all regulated by state statute, and we're allowed to do it on projects over $1 million.
So when you choose a contractor for design build, do you go to multiple ones and say, give us your proposal, or you choose one based on some criteria
Yeah,
first?
you'll do the request for qualifications. You'll specify all the things that are important to you. You'll hold your interviews. From that, you'll shortlist it to those who you want to be doing work with. And as the bridging documents are being created, you'll then ask them. Those will come back to them for a request for proposals based on those bridging documents for the project that you want to have built.
And you don't necessarily have to choose the least cost option, right?
That's correct.
Okay, and if we did approve this, any project would still come back to council for approval to actually use design build?
That's right. There's some prescriptive things that need to be adopted by state statute, the code of ethics, and the some workforce requirements. We're just getting those out of the way so that it's more streamlined in the future if we were to recommend this.
All right, thank you. Anyone else from council have any questions?
So this process actually does add in your toolkit the ability to define a budget, correct? And ask your bidders to bid not so much with regard to the budget itself, but with regard to the design that they put forward. So for instance, if a project were a couple of $1 million and the council wanted to keep it at that amount, design build bid allows you basically to define an amount, and the bids would come against that particular amount, and you would be choosing a design within that budget. Is that correct?
Yes, you can set a not to exceed. I mean, it'll be within limits of what you're trying to get built in your bridging documents. But assuming there's that kind of flexibility to get a design that meets your needs for the dollar amount you specified, you're working with that design build company to achieve that.
Right. And just to clarify what the purpose of this item is tonight, this simply gives the city the ability to go forward with this type of bidding process. It doesn't mean that we're going forward with any particular project under this process. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. Thanks.
So,
okay. So I'm a little bit concerned. I mean, we're not private industry, we're government. We're not spending the company's money, we're spending all our residents' money. And so I'm a little bit concerned, you know, the way I'm kind of understanding this is that design build 30%, things start moving, ground is broken, concrete's being poured. And so the community as a whole doesn't know what the total cost of this item is going to be because it's not designed yet. And so I'm concerned with that I think we need, first and foremost, to be very transparent in our process. Yes, we might be able to move faster with things, but if it's at the expense of leaving the residents with a true understanding of what the scope is, what the cost is, I think I like the current one that would retain the transparency, the ability of public notice, public discussion should there be maybe multiple views. And if we do the design bid, you know, it's often, I would interpret it to be it's off and running, and there's a lot less ability to get input and make adjustments before something is actually committed to. So.
Yeah, on the design build, you know, the cost you would have already locked in before the design builder starts doing their work. Where you have a potential risk is they're working off of these conceptual drawings and which are your bridging documents, which are very much performance based. You say you specify the amount of lumens of light. You're not really speccing out exactly the light fixture. And so you know, if you're an owner that wants to be in charge of every detail, then for a project, and you want to know what that detail is before the ground gets broken, then you would go design, bid, build as we have in the past. But if you will allow the contractor some flexibility and yet still meet your performance requirements, then there can be an opportunity to save dollars because they'll still meet the requirements, but you're not being that prescriptive in how they get there. So that's sort of the differences. And so as we would bring a project to council with a recommendation either way, we would clearly articulate the pros and cons and why it makes sense to go one way or to go the design build route. Our default is design bid build. We're not coming to council to do that, but if we do recommend this, we'll be very clear as to why.
So just to clarify, so any future project that you do recommend to use this option, it will come to the council for approval before taking this option.
Yes.
And as I understand, the state mandate is the only project that's over $1 million can use this option. And then it does require pay prevailing wages. For those who the design builder has to pay prevailing wages. So that's part of the state mandate.
Yeah, state statute is $1 million and a skilled workforce.
Skilled workforce.
Yeah, I believe that's the term they use, but prevailing wage.
Okay, and so I think it used to be design, bid, and build. With that, we see 100% of the design goes out to bid. We get the lowest bid, and I understand the drawback of that is the lowest bid might not be the best qualified council builder. The quality might not be good, but then they have the lowest bid. But with design build, the city would be able to choose builders that have more reputation, are more high quality. We might have better value, but may not be the lowest cost.
That's true.
So that's the trade-off,
Yep.
right?
Yes.
But I do also understand this there were some legal issues with this method, and it used to be kind of illegal, but the state statute has now resolved that issue, so now it's legal to do this. But it's required that the city should have a call for qualification process. I think there should be a scoring, objective scoring method, because I think the earlier drawback was the city might choose a favored builder, and it might not be fair to everyone. But now we would require objective scoring chart. But my concern right now is I don't see that chart. I think CUSD on the Cupertino Union School Board, we also did that. And at the time when we approved that, the staff gave us a list of the scoring, so we know exactly how the builders will be qualified. So I guess I hope to see that later. Yeah. And then another concern that I have is we will only see 30% bridging document. As we have understand recently, even 65% design is still a lot of things are changing. So if only 30% is specified, how do we know? How would the public know what we are getting? How can we possibly objectively specify the performance standard that we are expecting? We have to put a lot of trust in this builder that we choose. I guess the staff also needs to be really on top of everything. And it seems like there is a lot of room for negotiation. So I'm concerned about that. And then the resolution also says with the 30% bridging document, it may include plans, and I couldn't find the language. It may include plans, drawings, but not shall. So it may not include the drawings. So why are we not requiring plans? Can we make that a little firmer? What we would require in the design part?
I don't know if I'm quite following you. So we produce the bridging documents with the 30% concepts. Are you saying that we would have them provide us designs as they move along their process?
No, I thought the 30%, what would that include? I guess also it seems 30% is very, why not 65%?
Well,
Why-
it's conceptual to give the design builder, the broad brushstrokes of what we are looking to have done. It would have it's a schematic, conceptual.
How can we
of what do.
possibly have an estimate of the cost with only 30% design? And the resolution also says the bridging document may require plans, but not, may have plans, but not quite.
Maybe I can help clarify it a little bit. So with the design build process, the city would enlist the services of a bridging architect to produce those 30% plans. At that point, the city would go out to bid for a design build contractor, and the city would still have control over the design process. It's just that the design activity would shift from the bridging architect to the architect who is part of the design build team under the auspices of the contractor. So we would still go through a full design process. It's just that it would be done by the design build team at that point after the 30% was completed and after a design build contractor was brought on board.
But then the council would be asked to approve a project with only 30% design. We have to approve a budget for that project at the time when we go out for, I guess not bid,
We would have a budget at that time, and the budget would include a contingency. And the council would be asked for authorization, to give staff authorization to go out to bid, to enlist a design build contractor at that point after the 30% drawings. And then we would ultimately come back to council with a fully designed project that you could see prior to construction beginning. So you would authorize the beginning of construction as well.
Then how would the public, when is there any point the public can know at the 60% design what it's going to be?
We could provide updates to the public on the design at any point in the process that is deemed, relevant. So that could be at 65% or 75%. But generally, we could go from 30% and show that to the public and to the council at the same time, and then come back with 100% design.
Okay, so there could be still, okay. I guess another concern I've heard is with this short list. So we would use a call for qualification to shortlist the builders. And there had been cases where this could be used to exclude smaller builders who don't have as much record. But on the other hand, I know that for maybe it's better to have more reputable builders who have a wider range of record. But on the other hand, we might also be excluding a smaller company who are getting started and then they are really doing good work, but they might not just qualify for the qualification. So I would like to see in the future that the qualification scoring point we have really focus on quality, not size of companies.
We
So
can certainly
we are
provide
more fair.
a list of objective criteria for the council. And in terms of the size of the company, the criteria that comes to mind would be bonding capacity, not how many people they have on staff. That would really be something that we would look at.
Yeah, okay. So.
Rod?
Yeah, so one more time, can you summarize the main advantages of this new alternative that's allowed under state law?
So on this slide, I prepared a few of the pros and cons. One is there could be a reduced risk because so after the bridging documents are already drafted and you have selected the design build team, I
want you to be really concise.
that
So reduce what kind of risks are reduced?
So pointing of fingers as to design errors because they're both under one roof. And so if there was an error in speccing something wrong and it doesn't fit, it's all under the one roof. It's not a change order
I
back.
get that. Okay, significantly lower total change order cost.
That's tied into the first.
Yep. Okay.
Okay.
So is it fair to say that this produces probably in some cases a lower cost
In some
project?
In some cases it can, but there's not a guarantee with it.
So the idea is you want to be able to use your judgment as to when this would apply in circumstances where, we're trying to engineer cost. I mean, we talked about value engineering before.
Right.
Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. So I'd like to move this item and give staff flexibility.
Right, I don't think there's any downside because the council can always say, no, we want design bid build. We don't like the idea of design
Is
build.
that a second?
Yes, I will second.
So I'd like to add that it gives me comfort that Debs has done design build in NASA because I feel it's important that staff is on top of this when there's a lot of fluidity in the process. So, yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Can we vote?
Motion carries with Councilmember Willie voting no.
Okay. We are on to item 8. 9. Receive information report and presentation on Regnart Creek Trail 65% design and revised estimated cost, consideration of various trail improvement options, some of which also include on-street bicycle improvements and alternative trail alignments to the proposed trail on street, alternatives 4 and 5. And if design of the proposed trail continues, consider an increase in the design and environmental budget. So can we have the staff report?
You can.
Yeah.
I have a staff report.
30 seconds.
We've got a good audience. It's going to take a little bit longer than that.
Okay.
All right. Well, good evening again. Roger Lee, Director of Public Works. And this is for the 65% design option and alternative comparison for the Regnart Creek Trail. I do appreciate all the members of the community being here and their interest in the Regnart Creek Trail. Myself and staff realize this is a project that has the potential to affect many residents and the community, and that depending on the perspective of the individual, the effects range from positive to negative for this improvement. But regardless of this perspective, we respect everyone's opinion. And please note that there has been a replacement staff report as a desk item on this item, as well as attachments H, I, and G. All right. So as staff, our goal is to provide information about this project as clearly as possible. In this presentation, we will describe the purpose of the project, the design of the project at the 65% stage, and the status of how staff has been coordinating with residents and Valley Water regarding their concerns and requirements. As the Regnart Creek Trail is at 65% design, we do not have a complete design this evening. The input we received tonight from council and the community is very valuable to staff, and as staff does proceed to full design, we are committed to designing a project based on this input and appreciate the opportunity to have the discussion this evening. We also appreciate the patience that many residents living along the Regnart Creek Trail have had with staff and are empathetic to their concerns and the time it has taken to get to this meeting this evening. So we have much information to share, and I will get started. Do you want to talk with Deb?
I just wanted to have a little introduction about the option space that you'll see in some of these slides. Originally, we had the 65% design for the bike ped path that was originally conceived for this area. We have come up with options A, B, C, D, and E to provide council with the choices they need in terms of making a decision. And after developing, actually the impetus to developing those options was a couple of things. We heard from many members of the community that the overall trail in its original form was super expensive and a good portion of the annual bike ped budget. So we decided to develop options that were a little more budget sensitive. They were a little more environmentally sensitive and a bit more amenable to the water district's, the conversation we had with the water district. I myself have met with a good number of people along the trail, doing walks along the trail at least 4 or 5 times since I've been here to try and understand what the concerns are. And so we have also made sure that each one of the options presented has mitigations for privacy concerns and safety concerns. So we will walk through that in some detail coming up.
All right, thank you, Deb. So this slide just shows a flow chart of Regnart Creek Trail when it first got into our budget in 2016, how it was influenced by what was stated in the 2016 bike plan and on. In the 2016 bike plan, several references to the Regnart Creek Trail are within the plan, and the bike plan recommended that this project be studied from Pacifica Drive to East Estates Drive for conversion of the Valley Water access road to a path, and went on to recommend that a feasibility study be completed. The bike plan had identified about 90 projects in total and assigned the Regnart Creek Trail project a priority 2 priority with a score of 48 out of 100. This scoring was based on evaluation criteria that weighed safety, travel routes to and near school, network connectivity, low stress network improvements, trip generators, attractors, feasibility, ease of implementation, and stress test analysis. This project was assigned. Now, as you move on to the bike or to the PED plan here, is similar to the bike plan. The PED plan had also many references to the Regnart Creek Trail. The plan identified approximately 45 projects in total and assigned the Regnart Creek Trail a Tier 1 priority. This scoring was based on an evaluation criteria that weighed distance to schools, safety, which included street classifications and speed, destinations, and connectivity. This project was assigned a Tier 1, and its score was 70 out of 100. And I just wanted to provide that as some reference to the bike plans and PED plans that we have. Now, this slide is out of the 2016 bike and PED plan and shows what's known as the Cupertino Loop, and that's the area that you see in yellow on the plan, and it's a good illustration of how the Regnart Creek Trail project is part of a larger grouping of projects that, when completed, will form a large loop around the city that potentially connect many uses throughout the city. I'm going to try this link, and hopefully it works. We'll see. It may take me off this screen. Our Innovation Technology Department had prepared this, and it's a little bit interesting. It puts a, is everyone seeing this like me? Yeah, all right, good. So this is the loop itself in the dashed line, and what this does is it gives a representation of the type of improvements that were envisioned in the bike plan as you go on the loop. So this on McClellan Road, it was separated bike lanes. It doesn't quite look like that as we're building them now, but this is what was envisioned. You know, this is the UPRR trail that would go along the railroad right away. It goes down Stevens Creek Boulevard. Mary Avenue, that's a project that's funded now. Unapara Creek Trail, we're doing the design on that this fiscal year. Goes in up behind Valco. Another project identified is this on Main Street and Finch to get down. And then this is where you get into Creekside Park, and then now you're entering into the Regnart Creek Trail and the alignment that we're talking about this evening. But I thought that was very good at as to how the Innovation Department put that together. And
Can I ask the question on this map now, since it's shown here? So, so this loop, do we have any plan that's actually building on this part, the Finch and Barcelona? Because I got many questions about. I don't think we have any current project funded
not current,
for that.
But it's just identified in the bike and ped plans.
Okay.
Or the bike plan, the bike plan for
bike
sure.
plans identified I-90 projects.
95
Yeah,
projects.
you
But
said.
Right, so if the
So-
council could hold their comments till council comments, since we have about 90 cards that we have to get through,
But
so.
I think it's helpful to know how many of these are actually being funded that we will actually see in the next
And you'll have
few
the
years,
opportunity
right?
to ask that when when we
Okay.
bring it back to council.
Okay. Let me get back out
Because
of this.
the loop trail map you showed earlier, there are 2 red circles. The bike plan says that means there are issues to resolve. Those are here. and
That's right.
they are
Requires
not
further study.
resolved yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I was providing that just to show a broad overview how there's connectivity throughout the city, and there's many projects that have the potential to create that. Okay. So the next slide is an illustration out of the PED plan, and similar to the bike plan, you can see where the Regnart Creek Trail is identified, but this goes back to it being a Tier 1 project in the PED plan. And you can also notice from this illustration that there's quite a few of the same projects are shown here as were depicted in the bike plan. And then this slide just shows some alternates. So drilling down into what is the Regnart Creek Trail, the green line is that's what we're talking about this evening. Some people may not realize that there is this part of the proposed trail here on the north side of Pacifica. So this actually begins at Torrey and Pacifica before it gets, as it proceeds east and hits the trailhead, to then go north, parallel to Farallon. The alternates that are shown here, alternate 4 and 5, they'll also be discussed later in the presentation, where they're the on-street bike improvements that council, that are included in some of the options that Deb mentioned, and could be included at council's desire.
So this part would cut into the library field. Are we using part of the library field for bike path?
No, I'll show you an illustration of where it goes. I believe it will not cut into library field. The best alternative may actually be to widen the existing sidewalk that's at the north side of Pacifica now, but we're not taking out.
This is part of the 65% design? I haven't.
Yes, it always
Okay.
has been.
So it should be in there.
Yeah, it always has been. Okay, so and the next slide just gives an overview for everyone as to how my presentation is going to be outlined this evening. So I'll start off here with community outreach. So we've done quite a bit of community outreach on the project, and we had a walk shop at the, I believe that was the end of March, and we walked alternate 4 on the way back. But there's also been individual meetings with property owners that I'll touch on later, social media, and we've had our bicycle and ped commission involved in the project as well, and I'll discuss some of their recommendations in later slides. And as Deb has mentioned, there's been other meetings and conversations about the project as well. So different milestones. We sort of touched on this with the design build conversation. So a concept design occurs at 35%. And in that, you typically identify utility conflicts, and most of the major design elements are what you do. And oftentimes, you will prepare a preliminary cost estimate, 35. At 65%, you've refined that 35% design. You've included more sheets in the plans. You're talking about some details, erosion control. You're getting into more details of the project. And you've hopefully advanced to a point in the project where most of the design issues have been resolved, and the solutions are presented in the plans. That is the intent of what a 65% design looks like. At 95%, you've really refined that 65% design. You received comments on, and you're really getting close to 100% when you're going out to those are bid ready to go out to bid. So this evening is at the 65%, and I'll talk about how close of a 65% we're at in other slides. So the reasons why we're doing this council check-in this evening is to back up. In August of 2018, staff received the authority to proceed to 100% design on this project on a paved trail that's very similar to, of the options A through E, would be option B. So back in August of 2018, we had the authority to proceed to 100% design then. And typically that's exactly what we would do. However, due to the interest that this project has had to the community, staff has inserted the 65% check-in to provide updated information, to receive direction on the various trail options that we'll discuss tonight, and also to provide the council with updated cost estimates. So this next slide will discuss some of the status that we have with the residents. So, I mean, at many of the community meetings that we've had to date, they've been well attended by the residents that live along the creek trail. And there's about 84 residents that either immediately abut the trail or live on the opposing side of the creek. And beginning in April and May of this year, staff had offered one-on-one meetings with each and every resident to go over the preliminary design and just to receive their input and whatever concerns that they may have. And so, and one of the things that was most challenging, sort of press out a little bit fast, is the concerns that we were thinking of was on privacy, security, and noise. I mean, it's understandable with an improvement like this going behind someone's home that they would want to talk about that. And so that's what we were there to listen to and to explain any of the other design features that may be going on. And the reactions to the residents, understandably, they varied from, they didn't want to have the trail constructed to they would like to see certain amenities if it were constructed. And one of the most challenging areas that we have with the trail segment is on Lozano and De Palma, which is about a 400-foot section. And this is a picture of what that looks like on Lozano Lane. There's four homes, properties that abut the existing trail along this section, and then as you go east, there's 2 other properties that are on De Palma for the total of the 400 feet. And you can see here at the top slide where there's 20 feet of valley water deeded land there that goes up to that half fence that is the private fence to the property owners. Now our trail in this section would be 10 feet, and probably the only improvements we would do would be just to straighten out and smooth out this trail segment so it is consistently at 10 feet throughout. We have one pinch point here, and that's where this utility pole is. That there's nothing that we can do about, but we still have adequate width to have our trail there. Now, back when this development was constructed earlier in the 2000s, there was a joint use agreement that they had with Valley Water to plant these trees that you see on the top slide, and to plant those bushes and that. Now, today, Valley Water would not want those types of obstructions to be within their right-of-way. So it's a challenging area for us because we're sensitive to the property owner's desires for privacy there, but we're also, whatever we put there has to be removable by Valley Water. All right.
Can I ask a question because the picture is here now, it's easier. So here it is 20 feet, right? There are trees that's not removable anyways. So the residents have requested to, for the water, I think that they used to own maybe like 10 feet of this land, but then they deeded it to the water district when they developed this part. And the city did approve that development with that setting. This is with the approval of the city. And now we want to do a bike trail, so they are requesting, can the water district deed them back 1 foot so that they can build a nicer fence over there? So have we spoken to the water district about that? Because it's not taking away any of their clearance. This would be within the area that's blocked by the trees anyway.
Yeah, no, I understand. I'm not aware that request has come to staff to ask that of Valley Water. I would have no problems in asking that of Valley Water and seeing what they would say. I know when we've talked about land issues in the past with them, they're looking to probably swap land for somewhere else. But I can certainly talk to them about that.
So after a whole year, these options are not considered.
That's right. We've not had those kinds of conversations with the residents.
But have we even explored it with the water district? Because removable planter doesn't even make sense here because these trees are here anyway. Why do we want removable planters?
Everything that the Valley Water has said is they will not allow any obstructions in their right of way.
Even though they have trees there, that's
Even though
already
they
obstructing.
have trees. That's right. That's right. That was then and this is now. That's what we've been told.
That they are cooperating, that doesn't sound like cooperating to me.
They have been good to work with, but they have stood firm and consistent on that point.
Okay, continue.
All right. And this is a cross-section of just the profile there. So there's an existing wall that's there now. Then you have Regnart Creek below, and you can see the private fences. So this is just for reference. All right, so resident items that we do need to resolve prior to getting further into the design. One is fencing, and that's a good item to discuss at this point. In the staff report, 2,600 feet of fencing was budgeted in all the options, and only option A had this fencing as concrete. 2,600 feet does the majority of the fencing for those homes that are parallel to the creek on Farallon, Los Andes, and Lamar. And this length of 2,600 feet was selected as it is not anticipated that every resident will want to have their fences replaced, but it's a pretty sizable placeholder if they do. But ultimately, it would be up to the residents regarding the type of fencing that they would prefer. Staff feels that a wood fence is really the most appropriate for the area, but then again, we would respect, with the residents if they were to want concrete. And so the item of option A and B, and I'll get into those details later, is to show the difference in cost for the 2,600 feet of fence. Concrete fencing is estimated at around $500 a foot, and wood fencing is $50 a foot. And on the topic of fencing, and I had this in the staff report, is the city will be writing a policy regarding fence liability, and it's staff's intention that this policy would require the city to timely abate graffiti and make repairs that may be needed as a result of the public or the city, if damage had occurred. As the fences are private, the city would need property owners' permission to make this corrective work. The city would not be responsible for replacement fencing after the project is all done. I'm stating this now because as we move forward with the project, decisions need to be made regarding residents' fencing and what the project, and that this project will be the opportunity for them to get a fence that they desire. And I'm hopeful that we can have those conversations, after this evening. So the next slide discusses the Valley Water's status at this time. We've been meeting with them monthly, and the project is meeting the standards for width. And I mentioned having obstructions within their right-of-way, and they also require that anything that we do, they always have to maintain the 12-foot width requirement throughout the maintenance of the project. Now, in the staff report, it was stated that the proposed Regnart Creek Trail project meets Valley Water standards, and that requirements have been met, and that Valley Water is not opposed to the project. The intent of that statement in the staff report was that all trail options presented this evening meet Valley Water's requirement for this 12-foot unobstructed width, and that the railings where they may be placed meet the standard, as they will be removable. But because we are only at the 65% design, there does remain some outstanding items that need to be resolved with the with Valley Water, and that this is detailed in the next slide, and it was included in attachment I of the staff report. So there still are some things that need to be resolved with Valley Water. But Valley Water is not opposed to the project, and they have been a cooperative partner in the project to date.
Their comment on 65% design did say they would like the retaining curb to be moved, because that would reduce the length into 11.5
I'll talk more about the
inch,
retaining curb.
right? And then also there is no plan right now on how we are going to deal with the removing railing, how the truck is going to have access to be able to remove the railing or the bridge. These are all still not resolved.
The bridge removal, I'll talk about that in other
Yeah.
slides if I can go ahead and get on through it. All right. Speaking of Valley Water, I know that Lisa Bankosh, she's the assistant officer with Valley Water. I don't know if Lisa's in the audience. Oh, she is. Very good. So we do have a representative here from Valley Water. Okay. So the items that still need to be resolved with Valley Water at this point one is on drainage. Now that it plays into which option that we may select this evening, because if we choose the options A, B, or C, A and B are paved, and C has all the subsurface drainage improvements are already in there. If we select those options, then the drainage is already there, and there's really we meet Valley Water's requirements for drainage on options A, B, and C. Now if we go with D or E, that's the decomposed granite surface, and what we're still working out with Valley Water is if we proceeded with that type of surface material without having drainage 100% throughout, is what type of percolation that they would accept for that type of material, and what type of subsurface drainage improvements would be needed to ensure to them that we don't have water causing any erosion down the creek bank. And so those are details that we would work out with Valley Water depending on what option is selected this evening. But we can work that out. I don't see that as being an issue. Now, regarding the retaining curb that you mentioned, only options A and B would necessitate this curb. This curb, if installed, would be at the same elevation of the existing trail behind the private fences on some homes along Lamar. So a person that would be standing on this curb would not be at any greater height than standing there now. The purpose of the curb is to retain earth on the private side of the trail so that a cross slope is achieved on the paved trail that would be ADA compliant. So it's just to resolve some minor cross slope issues to make sure that we don't exceed ADA requirements. And so the curb wouldn't be that high, and it would not be any higher than the existing grade that's there now. Now, if we went with the decomposed granite options, that cross slope wouldn't be an issue, and the curb would not be required. And the thing with that curb is we'd have to work with the Valley Water if we went the paved option, because it is at an existing grade level, if they would consider that even an obstruction at all, that would minimize their width. I don't see how that it would, but it's just a point that we'd have to clarify with them. I think also not shown on this slide, but it should be discussed, are areas along the trail at Wilson Park and at Library Field This is also an outstanding item with Valley Water, where existing fencing is encroaching on Valley Water land. One strategy to resolve this is with a land swap at the end of Parkside Lane near Wilson Park. That will allow Valley Water better access to the maintenance ramp once it is relocated. And I'll show you that ramp on another slide. But more details on this issue will follow as the design progresses. But these still remain some outstanding items. But I'm confident, and I feel that Valley Water is also very optimistic and that they would support the solutions that we'll present.
The options, 65% design is on options A and B, right?
Well, that design,
So that's the design they reviewed and commented on.
The plan set that was attachment C to these drawings probably most is similar to option B. Okay, and because it's but now if we choose
Paved with wooden fence.
there you go.
Okay.
And now if we choose to go another option C, D, or E, then we would immediately change those
So,
65% plans to those options.
As I understand, for that option, the paved option, Valley Water still has issue with the drainage. There are some areas we are draining towards the creek, but they are concerned about erosion. They would like all the water to drain away from creek. That's still not resolved, right?
They do want the water to drain away from the creek, but we are putting in a 6-inch perforated line throughout the whole length for options A and B, so that will be resolved.
But it's not yet from the last comment letter, after a whole year.
If we do the paving with the full grading drainage, it will be resolved, and whatever issues that Valley Water may have on that, there's a place for the water to go.
I mean, this is you guys have been on this for a whole year with weekly meetings, and it's still not
monthly
quite
meetings.
Monthly meetings. It's still not quite resolved. This drainage issue is something they brought up back in August 2018, I think, in their first August 20th letter. So,
well, again, we're at 65%. I mean, it's very much a negotiation process. We don't run to the highest cost solution right away, but we'll get to a solution.
So we will after another year.
No, no, I have a schedule here. All right. So the next is some cross sections for Regnart Creek Trail to help put it in perspective on some of the widths. So I mentioned here at Pacifica, that would be on the lower left. Now, this is one rendering that the trail could go in between these trees. However, I'm concerned with doing much of any excavation in between the trees, to damage the root system of the trees. It may be more practical to widen the sidewalk over here to get the width that we need instead of going in between the trees. So that is an option.
Oh, wait, I thought this part is included in the 65% design, but you are saying this part is not designed yet?
Right now it's going in between the trees, and what I'm telling you is there.
Oh, so right now it's between the trees.
Yes.
It will take away the library field, a part of the library field.
Yeah.
I'm
and what I'm saying is
assuming
it could be better.
Residents won't like that.
Well, but I'm telling you that we'll take the sidewalk on the
We
north
are going
side.
to move it to the sidewalk.
We'll widen
How
the
come we
sidewalk.
didn't do that earlier? How come we are still talking about this
Respectfully,
after a
Vice
year?
Mayor, can you wait for his answer, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we can get the width on the north side and have less impact on the trees and library field. So as we then go to the north.
Wait. My question is, this is after a whole year of working on this, on the 65% design. How come we are still not sure what we would want to do on this section? And have we gotten residents' feedback on this section for the people who live around Library Field?
I've not myself gotten input on this particular section. I'm just telling you what I feel is the most reasonable solution is to widen the sidewalk.
So can we hold the council comments? We have 102 cards now.
I think
So
it's
can you
important for the
Stop interrupting and let him finish, and you will have all the time you want for questions after public comment.
Okay, so after a whole year, we don't have a good answer.
Okay, please continue, Roger.
Okay, so as you head north, the width of the proposed trail would be 10 feet, a 10-foot trail, 2-foot shoulders minimum. But through this reach here, along Fairlawn, there's ample width, and I know many of you have probably walked the trail to know that. As you head up towards Rodriguez in this area here, the trail will also be 10-foot minimum and a minimum of 2-foot shoulders on either side. There'll be a trailhead connection to Regnart would be at that point there, or to Rodriguez, excuse me. This area here to the east is, now this is Lamar in this area here. This is where we have some of the most restricted widths of the trail. And so the trail would be 8-foot trail and then 2-foot shoulders on either side. This next slide, it's a little bit disjointed how these pictures are shown. So now we're back in the section near Lozano here, and where we'll have, we really have an existing 10-foot area here now, and we'll just be smoothing that out. And then as we continue on towards the Lamar area through here, this is all 8-foot and 2-foot shoulders. So some comparable trails as to how those widths are compared to other trails in our area. The Saratoga Creek Trail, which is that's a city trail over near Bollinger, west of Lawrence, 7-foot, 11.5-foot clear. This is the San Tomas Aquino Creek Trail, here 11-foot clear. And these other two trails. The one that you see here on the right is the existing trail that we have from East Estates that makes the connection to Creekside Park. So this next slide shows all the elements that are in all the options. So this slide applies to all options A through E. So every option has this. So we're going to be doing all the improvements at the street crossings at Blaney and East Estates Drive. And I'll show you some details of those. We'll be relocating the Valley Water Maintenance Ramp there by Wilson Park. All of the options do some grading, of course. And then the Lozano de Palma, we still need to work out the details with the property owners, but we do have a $40,000 placeholder for that work in the budgets. And also the backyard fencing, as I mentioned, as desired. So this gets into the specifics of the Blaney Avenue crossing, how it would look. I think so. This up is north, so the creek trail, it seems probably about in this area here. It would go across, and so that would be more or less the path that cyclists and pedestrians would use on the creek trail. There'd be some concrete, there'd be some bulb outs here. Blaney is a 30-mile-an-hour street, and it has quite a bit of traffic. So we want to give some refuge to people who are crossing the street here. There would be, the image on the right is a rectangular rapid flashing beacon. That would be button activated on either side. So if anyone was to cross, they would push that button. You can see how right now we have a Class 2 bike lanes that are on Blaney Avenue, and that bikes would continue to stay within their lane as they go across that bulb out. So those would be the improvements there. So people who are going across Blaney would they would feel a need to slow down some to negotiate that little bit of a zigzag to get across the street. So the next is the East Estates crossing. Now this is a 25-mile-an-hour street, so the speeds are lower, the volumes are lower, and so we can do a little bit more on it. And so it has very similar improvements to Blaney, but the crosswalk would be raised, and that's what you're seeing down here. And you can see some other improvements are occurring in some other areas up here as well. All right. Now the next slide gets us into the maintenance ramp with Valley Water. This too is on all the options. Originally we had thought that we would need two ramps to two bridges to. I'm sorry, I'll get my ramps and my bridges mixed up. Right now there's a ramp that exists on the south side of the creek, and we're proposing to relocate that ramp to the north side of the creek. And the advantages of that, as you can see here, we're able to reduce one bridge. And it also has a much more direct path for trail users, because instead of having to go, turn to go through Wilson Park and then come back onto the trail, now trail users can just keep going straight. But we're keeping one bridge that would keep Wilson Park as a connection to the trail, because we think that that's a very valuable element for that. Now, the Valley Water is supportive of relocation of their access ramp. I think it provides them better access on the north side than its current location. And there is the potential to where Valley Water we'd enter into an agreement with them, and of course we would be paying for it, but they could perform the relocation work of the ramp and work underneath their own environmental permits, and that would be a savings to the city if we could work with Valley Water to do that, and it could be a win-win with their ramp getting located onto the north side. So this shows an aerial of the location. So the existing ramp is, you can see it there in yellow, and sort of the location where the proposed ramp would be. And what would happen is they just have, Valley Water would have better access in this area here to get to the creek than coming in off of Blaney and Easton States and having to back up all the way. So you can imagine that it is a better for them. And it would reduce us to just the one bridge. And you can see the bridge here to the lower right, and the connection then to the existing trail at Wilson Park. And ideally, we would locate that bridge to where we'd have the least impact to the trees that are there, and also be mindful that we try not to go at mid-length of a property on the opposite side. We would try to go in, say, at a property line fence, so we don't have people going in perpendicular to the existing neighbors. This is a render.
Just to clarify, all these have not been designed yet. 65% design was based on the original alternative 1 from the feasibility study, which turns out to not be feasible anymore because it's going to it will cut into the baseball field. So this new option, it wasn't in the feasibility study, and it's not in the 65% design. We don't know where the ramp will be. We don't know where that trail will be yet.
We don't know where what will be?
The
trail on the park side?
Can you show the map? So right now there is no design yet on where exactly that will be, or where exactly that will be, right? There isn't currently no design.
Yeah, you're not going to see a plan sheet that shows the bridge there and that connection.
So this is just a concept right now.
No, that's right. Because, these options weren't known back in earlier at the 35%, and based on what we've learned and being able to provide a variety of different costs and options, that's what this check-in is about.
This may or may not be feasible?
No, it's feasible.
It will depend on the permits, environmental permits. How do we know it's feasible?
Well, we go through the permitting process. We don't anticipate anything in any of the options not being feasible. We wouldn't present them if they were.
How come this option wasn't considered in the original feasibility study?
There'll be plenty of time for your questions during council comments, so just like all of us, we're writing them down and keeping a log, and we can go back. So I know we should respect all the residents that are here.
It's harder to go back with we have map now.
But the maps will still be there available when we go back.
And I know that we have a lot of students that are waiting to speak, and I think it would be respectful if we were able to get through this presentation and hear from them so they can go do their schoolwork.
And I will by the way, I will let the students speak first because we do have a curfew in Cupertino, and
but
they
I
should
do
get home
think it's
before that.
important for the residents to know exactly what has been done and not done. And it wasn't clear from the staff report.
Okay, I'll keep going, and I'm not
Please
going.
proceed quickly.
I'm not going anywhere. All right, so elements that are not included in any options is we're not proposing that the gates are closed of an evening. We're not proposing security cameras, and obviously we're not including anything that would cause obstructions within the Valley Waters right-of-way. And one of the first few slides I had on there, the on-street improvements, alternatives 4 and 5. And these alternatives are part of options C and D. And I want to go over what they are. And I put this slide in here because I think most people don't know what a Class 1 to a Class 4 bike lane is. And I'm going to be referring to them, and I wanted just to give somewhat of a visual. And while this one at the top left, that's the existing trail that we have from East Estates into Creekside Park. There's some exceptions as to how it's not quite a Class 1, but what it represents is it's getting users off of the street. There's no vehicles that are allowed on this trail, and that is the essence of what a Class 1 is. A Class 2, we see these all around the city. A Class 3 is where you're sharing the road. And a Class 4, well, it's difficult to see here. There's a physical barrier here that this would be similar to what we're doing on McClellan right now, from Bub to Stelling, where there's a physical barrier that separates the bicyclists from the cars. So for alternate number 4, which, as I mentioned, is options C and D, so the Regnart Creek Trail, let's see here. So it's moving up through here like this, right? That would be the actual trail alignment. So this would be something that could complement options C and D, to where you would have a Class 3 bike route would be on Pacifica. This is Pacifica here. And you'd also would have, and remember, this is just to share the road on Lamar. And then you would have a Class 2 lane, which we already have, on Blaney. And then we would have enhanced crossings at Blaney, and we would have at Lamar. So that's, then we're over here at East Estates. So that's what alternative 4 is. It's about $175,000 to do that. It's predominantly, striping, signage, and pop-up bollards to do the traffic calming. Alternate 5 is the next slide. I should mention on alternative 4, the Bike and Ped Commission, they had the recommendation not to proceed with alternate 4, and the context of that was it's not in lieu of Regnart Creek Trail itself, because for it to be consistent with the bike and with the bike plan is you want to get people off of the street, and so alternate 4 wasn't considered by the Bike Ped Commission as desirable over Regnart Creek Trail, because alternate 4 does not get people off the street, and that is why the BPC did not recommend alternate 4. But I just want to let you know that the context of that. Now, alternate 5 is to the north of the Creek Trail. So the Creek Trail is what you're seeing here. And what it does is it goes along Rodriguez, and then it ties in at, it goes down Blaney. Let's see if I'm getting this right here. Let's see, getting my bearings mixed up here. So it goes all the way down to Parkside Lane, which is here, sorry. And then it cuts through Wilson Park, through this area here. And then it eventually gets into Vicksburg and onto East Estates at the far right of this slide. That's what alternate 5 is about. And you would have enhanced crossings at Blaney and at East Estates. And it would probably require some path improvements in Wilson Park. Those paths are pretty narrow right now, so they'd have to be improved in this. So that's alternates 4 and 5. Now I've been discussing about options A and E for quite a while here, so I wanted to get to that slide. Okay, so option A is it's all pavement. I've given you the widths of the trails and the minimum widths and the shoulders already, so everything is paved throughout. And it also includes a concrete privacy wall. This is one of the more expensive options that we have. It also includes the railing that you see on the top right throughout the entire reach of the trail segment. And the trail is about 0.8 miles long. And so it's just a three-rail high railing, about 3.5 feet tall, and it's removable. And so it sort of sets in sleeves. You can just pick this thing up and move it. That's how that would work. And I just gave I made a reference to this concrete wall down in the corner that's similar there on East Estates. It wouldn't be exactly like that, and it wouldn't be in addition to the private fences that are there now. It would be a replacement of the private fences if that's what the property owners would want. There would not be a double fence. That's option A. Now option B is, of course, it's the same alignment. Everything is the same except it would be wood fences instead of the concrete fences. And so this is a breakdown of the cost for both options A and B. And we provided an estimated itemized cost for the various improvements to give some details there. Now, option C and D. What option C is it does all the subsurface drainage improvements that are done when the trail is paved, so that if in the future, if we were to decide to pave the trail, all the subsurface drainage would be complete. That's what option C is, but for now, it would be a decomposed granite surface. It would be similar to what you see, there in that close-up shot. But if you walk around it's as close as our city hall or the plaza area where the interactive fountains is. Those surfaces are decomposed granite. If you walk around the trees or around the corner at Torrey and Rodriguez, if you wanted an example of what it looks like, it's a good all-weather surface. But it does have some loose rock at the top. It's not prone to rutting. It has pretty good drainage and percolation. But because it wouldn't be pavement, the trail would not be designated as a bike trail. It would be a footpath. That doesn't mean that cyclists could not use the trail. They certainly could. But I think overall, the speed on the trail would likely be lower because it's not paved. And if cyclists were to want to use it, they could, or they could use the on-street improvements, which would be alternate 4 or 5. And that's why in options C and D, staff is recommending alternate 4. We like alternate 4 just because that's what the blue line is about. It's just a better alignment, in our opinion, than going down Rodriguez and through Wilson Park. Option D, it really just it doesn't anticipate that the trail will be paved in the future, and so it does less on the drainage improvements. But otherwise, both options, they do have less railings versus options A or B. And really the rationale behind that is the users of the trail are going slower, and we're only recommending that we have railings where we have 2 foot shoulders, and that's mainly on the Lamar side. So Lamar in this area here would all have railing. But the other areas would not. There would be railing at some of the trailheads, but otherwise there would be limited railings in options C and D. And then this is just the associated cost with both of these and the amenities. Okay. Now option E is an option that we're not recommending, and how it's different is it does not provide any railings at all other than at trailheads. So it's not providing the railings on Lamar. And again, we just feel, even though it is a footpath, having a 2 foot shoulder to the edge of the embankment is not recommended, and that's why we're not recommending option E. And it also does not include alternate number 4, so there's no on-street bike improvements with this option either. So, yeah, so this is the cost for that, and obviously it's lower than the rest. And just to look at it all as a big picture, this would be similar to the attachment G to the staff report that shows all the options lined up against each other. So, yeah, so, again, you would have a multi-use path for options A and B. It would be ADA accessible, but you get into options C, D, and E, and they would not, they would be a footpath, and it would not be considered accessible. All right, so here is just a schedule for us to get to the 100% design and environmental review. I don't think I need to go over all of that, but where we see going with it. You see that acronym of JUA, that's a joint use agreement with Valley Water. So before we would be able to proceed to construction and ask council for construction dollars, we'd want to have that joint use agreement already executed. And that would just define the maintenance responsibilities of the city in using that Valley Water land. That's what the joint use agreement would do. And so we would go, at that time, we'd have the joint use agreement in hand. We would have the construction budget and ask council for authority to advertise, and because we'd have the 100% design in hand. The actual schedule to do that is this here. Now, if we're able to do some coordination with Valley Water on the relocation of that ramp, this could be speeded, but this is where we see it now. And so our recommended options, staff recommends options B, C, or D. You know, again, for the concrete wall, we just don't think that that's a very good location for all concrete next to a trail. And E, we don't recommend because of the lack of railings. All right, I think everything else I've covered. And so this is the next steps, and I touched the first bullet already. And the last bullet is important because of the different grant opportunities that could be available for this project. I mean, we would be looking at the Measure B, which is all competitive for bike-and-ped improvements. We would be going after that. And also, there's quite a long list of grant opportunities we'd look at, but also the vehicle trip reduction grant through the Bay Area Air Quality Management District to help offset some of the expenses of this. So that's the end of my staff report.
Great, thank you. All right, so we're on to public comments. How many cards do we have now?
102.
102 cards. So I have cards marked students and children, so they will get to go first. So you each get 3 minutes. It would be really wonderful if you didn't take all 3 minutes. But I'm not going to cut it down because when I was out there, I hated when I was cut down to 2 minutes. No offense, Richard. So we will start with Rakil Konduru, followed by Mahesh Vegaraju, followed by Lawrence Fahn. So if you can all line up. Yes. What? Because in Cupertino we have a curfew for people under 18 and they can't be out late. Okay, thank you. Is Rakil Konduru here? Okay, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Sharf and esteemed council members. I'm Sharia Nair, and I'm a 7th grader at Lawson Middle School, and I bike regularly. The Regnart Creek Trail not only increases safety for bikers, but also for pedestrians who just want to use it for recreational uses. So therefore, it's going to be extremely helpful to the 550 students that could stand to gain faster access to their schools. About 1,650 people have signed in support of this trail, and opposing this trail are only about 30 or so people. So therefore, it's obvious that the support behind the trail vastly overwhelms the amount of opposing the opposition team. So I think that this trail not only ensures safety, but it also means that people need or want this trail just because they can get to school or work faster or even if they just want to take a friendly walk down on a stroll. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being brief. You know, because we have so many cards, please, if you would not applaud after each one.
At 3
It would
minutes,
really
we're already
be
looking
wonderful.
at over 5 hours,
Right.
folks,
It
okay?
Okay,
So-
Mahesh, followed by Lawrence Fawn, followed by Indira Abhyankar. Welcome, Mahesh.
Should I go?
Yeah, go.
Hello, Mayor and City Council. My name is Akash, and I'm in 7th grade. I live in Cupertino and very close to the proposed trail. I'm here to help persuade the City Council to vote yes for the construction of the Regnart Creek Trail. I attend Lawson Middle School, and I want to be able to bike on this trail when I go to Cupertino High. My parents currently do not allow me to bike to school because it can be quite dangerous to bike on the road, even in the bike lanes. The traffic is bad on many routes, especially during rush hour. It is an easy decision. If more kids bike or walk to school, it will mean less traffic and less pollution. Please help protect our community and our environment. Some people doubt that this trail is even safe. However, it is much safer than walking and biking on the streets. This will help reduce the threat of accidents. I can use this trail to walk on the weekends without having to worry about car traffic or road noise. It'll be beneficial for all the other people like me who like walking around to get some exercise. As you can see, the Regner Creek Trail will significantly help the people of Cupertino. I urge you to please vote yes for the construction of the trail. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you. Next is Lawrence Fawn, followed by Indira Abhyankar, followed by Juliet Sheeran. Welcome, Lawrence.
Good evening, Stephen Scharf and council members. My name is Lawrence Fan. I'm a junior at Cupertino High School, and I'm here to support the Regnar Creek Trail. So first of all, I would like to thank you guys for giving the time to listen to our opinions. That means a lot to us. And I'll give you three reasons why I support the Regnar Creek Trail. So the 3 reasons are serviceability, safety, and leisure. So in terms of serviceability, the Regnart Creek Trail, as a high school student, the Regnart Creek Trail is able to connect high schoolers with school from their houses. Because I live off Blaney at Lamar Drive, so the Regnart Creek Trail would be a great access route for me to go to Cupertino High School as well as come to a library. And a lot of students also live around the library, so it would benefit a lot of students here as well. Also, in terms of safety, right now, when I bike to Cupertino High School, I bike on roads, and especially along Barcelona, going into Finch, there's a lot of cars, so it's really dangerous for bikers. So by increasing the amount of bikes that are coming into Cupertino High School, we decrease cars, which would improve traffic, and which would also help with safety. And finally, for leisure, I know a lot of friends and also a lot of neighbors who would go around and walk or run for their leisures, and the Regnart Creek Trail would be a perfect place for them to do that. So for all these 3 reasons, I support the Regnart Creek Trail, and I urge you guys to do so as well.
Okay, thank you. Next we have Indira Abhyankar, followed by Juliet Sheeran, followed by Kelly Tong. Welcome, Indira.
Hi, sorry, Indira couldn't make it because of the time, so I'm here to read a letter on their behalf.
Oh, great, okay.
Okay, so, good evening, Mayor Scharf and City Council members. My name is Indira, and I'm currently a sophomore at Cupertino High School. I started biking to school at the beginning of the school year. However, I stopped after a couple of weeks. This was due to the fact that I found myself in congested areas of bike and vehicle traffic on multiple occasions. There is also a Cupertino High School student that ran into a car on his bike, and my friends that bike to school told me they had almost been hit by cars numerous times. Having the Regnart Creek Trail will definitely increase the safety of students who walk or bike to school, since it provides a pathway free of cars. It will also encourage more kids to walk or bike to school, which would benefit them and make the traffic around Cupertino High lessen. With your support, we can make a safer, healthier future for Cupertino residents. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Next we have Juliet Sheeran, followed by Kelly Tong, followed by Ishan Khosla. Welcome, Juliet.
So I do have a visual aid here, if we can get that on the, okay.
Okay.
So, good evening, Mayor Scharf and council members. My name is Juliet Sheeran, and I'm a sophomore at Cupertino High School. However, I'd also like to mention Aditya Nair, a Cupertino High School freshman, Anya and Ishan Khosla, both of whom go to Eaton Elementary, Shabaj Mahmood, Mawash Shabaj, Umar Mahmood, all of whom are residents, and one of whom goes to Lindbergh High School, as well as Doran Dashush, all of whom had to leave today because of how late the meeting got. They were all here to support the Regnart Creek Trail, and I'd like you to take their opinions into account as well. Anyway, I'm here representing both myself and the vote of the Teen Commission unanimously to support the Regnart Creek Trail. I'm asking you to vote yes tonight to go to construction of the Regnart Creek Trail without another vote. I've looked at the maps and seen for myself that 250 students from Cupertino High School could use this trail easily to more safely walk from the city center and Wilson Park neighborhoods. Some residents have said that the last 800 feet between Creekside Park and the high school is still an issue. I agree, and that's why I'm working with Safe Routes to School and with the Transportation Department to improve these issues. Many people have seen the new bollards that were added at Calle de Barcelona and Finch, which have slowed traffic and improved the crossing. Other plans are to improve the traffic light timing at Miller and Calle de Barcelona, and there's concept work going on for a bike lane on Finch at the baseball field. What's important to consider is that we can add these pieces to our complete walking and biking infrastructure, and when connected, they'll form complete end-to-end improvements. If one key piece is removed, such as the Regnart Trail, then that's not possible. We shouldn't decide to do nothing because we can't do everything at once. Our Safe Routes surveys show that the number of biking and walking students in Cupertino is flat or decreasing slightly. It's not increasing. Now is the time to act to reverse that trend. Please, vote tonight to go to construction on the Regnart Trail to give our students a safer option. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, next is Kelly Tong. Is Ishan no longer here? Is Ishan here, or did he leave? He left. Oh, okay, Kelly Tong, Ishlan, and Anya Kosler. Welcome, Kelly. Okay.
Good evening, Mayor Sharf and City Council members. My name is Kelly Tong and I attend Monte Vista High School. I am here to voice my support for the Regnart Creek Trail. This trail would encourage students to actively commute by walking or biking to schools, allowing students to get to school safely and socially. Furthermore, the trail can also be used to going to the library, getting to parks, healthy exercising, and getting to friends' homes. It is necessary for this trail to be built at whatever price the council deems fit. Even if it is a simple design, it can always be improved later. Please decide the final decision on this project today, as the process has become too polarizing. It is not beneficial for our community to continue this debate. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next I have Aditya Nair, followed by Shaurya Nair, followed by Winfred Lin. Aditya and, oh, okay, so, okay, welcome Winfred Lin, followed by Samir Linskog, followed by Purva Marfashia. I'm sorry if I'm mangling these names. Welcome, Winfred.
Hello, Mayor Sharf and the City Council. My name is Winfred, and in my opinion, the Regnart Creek Trail should be constructed. Here are some reasons why it should be constructed. If the construction of the Regnart Creek Trail is approved, there are a lot of grants out there that can help with the funding of the trail. Most often, the total cost of the construction is significantly decreased, and so the money that this city needs to pay is significantly less than the total amount for the construction. One example of this is the Stevens Creek Corridor Trail. Originally, the total construction price was $3.3 million, but $2.8 million of that $3.3 million was provided by outside funding. That means that the city only had to pay less than $500,000, which is only 15% of the project cost. As mentioned by a previous speaker, only 30 residents that live along the trail do not support the trail, while we have 1,650 signatures from residents around the community that say that They support the trail. Clearly, the Regnart Creek Trail should be constructed. Thank you, Mayor, and the City Council for giving me the opportunity to speak here tonight.
Okay, thank you. Samia Linskog, followed by Purva, followed by Prachimar Fadia. Welcome, Samil.
Hello, Mayor Sharf and esteemed council members. I am here today to speak in favor of the Regnart Creek Trail because I feel that it could benefit many kids, such as my own, and people who are going to be going to Cupertino High. The Regnart Creek Trail would also benefit as a pleasure hike just for anybody who wants to hike there because it is great scenery and lots of trees. It is very eco-friendly and it is planned to cut down no trees and harm the environment as little as possible. So therefore, all in all, it would be a good choice. Another reason why it should get passed is because some of these streets on the way to Cupertino High are not very safe. Most of them aren't actually. There are big intersections and huge busy roads. Now I know this isn't the same area where it happened, but I have an example from where I go to school. At Lawson, I bike there every day. And every day there is a new person who just doesn't seem to care about bike safety. For example, every day I go there, I turn to go into the entrance and I'd make the turn signal, but the people keep on going. So I end up having to wait for them all to pass until it is safe to cross. This issue has gotten so bad that they have posted a cop outside the boulevard to make sure that the people that are biking are going a safer route. And I got approached by that cop this morning, and she told me that I have to go on the sidewalk and walk my bike. And I think that she was doing a good service. And if she's here, I would like to give a shout out to her and say thank you for your services.
Okay.
And that is all. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Next we have Purva, followed by Prachi, followed by Michael, Jessica, and Gabrielle.
Could I just interrupt for 1 second? I think earlier you said there was someone here from the Water District, and they raised their hand.
Yes, there was Lisa.
Is she still here? That's why I would, if she was, I would like to have had her comments before she left.
Okay, welcome, Purva.
Thank you. I'm here today to voice my support for the Regnart Creek Trail. I support this decision for 3 main reasons. First off, there is the fact that, as voiced by many previous speakers, it would provide a much safer and more direct route to school. As Samuel just said, traffic around school in itself is bad, and also on the way, there is a lot of danger in getting to school. For example, my sister and I, we walked to school, and just the other day we saw a dead cat on the side of the road. It was very sad. I couldn't help but think how close I could have come to being that cat. Second, most of the city is in favor of the trail in itself because about 1,650 votes say yes and only 30 oppose it. Lastly, traffic and pollution are both prevalent problems, and they could easily be solved if this trail was approved. If parents felt comfortable letting their kids walk and bike to school, that would put less cars on the road, meaning that there would be less traffic and pollution. Due to these reasons, I strongly implore you to support the Regnart Creek Trail. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next we have Prachi, followed by Michael, Jessica, and Gabriella, followed by Christie Harris. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Prachi Marfotia, and I am currently a 7th grader at Lawson Middle School. For the past 2 years, I've been walking or biking every day to and from school. The Regnart Creek Trail will not only allow me, but many other students, the total is about 550, from neighboring schools, to walk or bike to school safely. Our parents will also have much less stress on their backs because it isn't a really good alternative, safe way to get to school without biking on the roads, which can cause accidents, as well as not having to be dropped off by a car, which will reduce the problem of traffic in Cupertino, as well as it is better for the environment. For these reasons, I hope you make the right decision to support our city and support the Regnart Creek Trail. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being brief. Next, we have Michael, Jessica, and Gabriella.
So I'm a bit older than all the other previous
it
speakers.
just said child with them, so, okay.
She had to go home, unfortunately, because it's getting a bit late.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I think the kids have made a wonderful point at explaining how the trail would benefit them commuting to school and just traveling through the neighborhood much more safely by bike. As a biker myself, and as someone who has lived for 10 years in the Netherlands, I can attest to the real benefits of having completely separated bike route from the rest of traffic. I commute every day from Foothill to Apple in Infinite Loop, and I think, so it's a 5-mile commute. I get probably 3 or 4 near misses with cars per week. I grew up in Paris. I'm kind of used to crazy traffic. People just don't see us on the bike. I'm wearing that every day. I have lights all over. And so it's a real problem. For kids, my daughter used to bike every day in the Netherlands. The Netherlands at rush hour is more bikes than cars, with all the kids doing very long distances on their bike if needed. She has not ridden outside of our neighborhood so far. They love to come to the public library. They have my wife and my daughters. They've never used their bike to come here. It's hopefully going to improve with the great work that's being done on McLellan. But having additional trails for kids to commute back and forth between their house and the library or their school is really beneficial. That's why I support this project. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Next, we have Christie Harris, followed by Ari Harris, followed by Katie Lee. Welcome, Christie.
Good morning, boys and girls. My name is Chrissy. I like the trail because I like nature and
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you for being the briefest speaker. Next, we have Ari Harris.
Hi, my name is Ari. I like to ride my bike to school. I think that a trail is good for pedestrians, bikers, and people walking dogs. And I can ride my bike to school with my sister on the trail. And please build the trail. I hope you enjoyed my speech. Thank you.
Thank you. We did. Next.
And if I may go so I can take the poem.
Go.
So I'm here to speak in favor of the Regnart Creek Trail. So thank you and good evening, Mayor Sharp and City Council members. My family and I would be regular users of the trail. And to add some relevant context to what I'm about to share, I'll give you a brief summary of my credentials. I have an MBA from the University of Colorado at Colorado Springs, 6 years of experience in the financial services industry, and I've spent the last 2 years operating my own diversity and inclusion consultancy. So a major focus of my work has been to analyze the ways in which underrepresented people are disproportionately disadvantaged by policies, systems, and resource allocation. So when we look at mobility, or the ease with which people can travel to their desired destination, it's easy to see how those of higher socioeconomic standing benefit. They're the ones who can afford to purchase vehicles, often one vehicle for every person of eligible driving age. Those who are disproportionately disadvantaged are those who cannot afford to do the same. That would be the poor, the underemployed, or simply those whose salaries have not kept pace with the exponential rate of increased housing costs in the Bay Area. So these are the people then who are forced to accept the higher risk of injury or death on a regular basis when traveling along roads as a pedestrian or bicyclist. Not to mention the large number of children in Cupertino who walk or bike to school or to the park, like these crazy kiddos here with me. It was not so long ago that this city mourned the loss of a student who was killed while biking to school along a roadway. And to be fair, it's not just Cupertino. So long as we have humans behind the steering wheel, we're going to see human error causing injury or worse. So by funding a trail separated from the roads, the city of Cupertino can take a strong step towards unburdening those who, for whatever reason, socioeconomic or simply their youth, cannot drive. And these people would no longer have to assume that daily risk by instead using this trail. And as a mom of 2 elementary-age children, with only 1 car in our family that my spouse uses to get to work, I would love to avoid the potential of encountering reckless drivers by using a trail that is separated from vehicles. So I would love to see you vote yes for safety, for inclusion, for equity, and for our children by voting yes tonight to build this trail and not delaying. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Katie Lee, followed by Calvin, it looks like Anderson, followed by Arnav Gokali. Welcome, Katie.
I support the idea of the Regnart Creek Trail because I think it will be very good for a city. First, it would make commute to and from school for kids like me much faster. It would make our route much more direct, which means that we can always get to school on time. Second, it'll be much more safer. It'll be much more safe for people in general because when going to the library, the park, or just basically anywhere, then we wouldn't need to cross so many big streets. Finally, this trail could decrease carbon emissions, which for people who like the environment like me, it would be good. This is because people will want to walk and bike more than drive. So I think the creek trail would be a great idea. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Calvin, followed by Arnav Gokali, followed by Akash Gokali. Welcome, Calvin.
Good morning, Mayor Scarf and fellow City Council members. My name is Calvin. I'm a junior from Cupertino High School. So last week I turned 16. I can finally attend my driver's permit, but I still walk because I enjoy the health benefits. So last week I read an article saying how you can extend your life 2 to 4 years just by walking 20 minutes. So I walk to the library and school every day, totaling up to an hour a day, 7 times a week. But it hasn't been really great for me lately, as like the extended walk and the dreadful heat really makes it uneventful and unenjoyable. The Regnart Creek Trail will not only benefit me, as I met countless students at the library who suffer from the similar problems as me. Additionally, I'm a environmental club officer in my school, and I'm a pretty big environmental activism. So, as mentioned previously, it would take a significant amount of cars off the roads and therefore lowering pollution levels. And although it's a small step towards a bigger picture. And I think that's very beneficial. So overall, there's 2 reasons why I support the Regnart Creek Trail. So better efficient walking and environmentalism. Thank you for your attention and listening to my concerns.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Arnav, followed by Akash, followed by Tim Wee. Welcome, Arnav.
Hello, City Council. My name is Arnav Gokhale. I live in Cupertino, very close to the Regnart Creek. I want to request the City Council to vote yes for the construction of the Regnart Creek Trail. I am in Eaton Elementary and will eventually attend Cupertino High. I want to be able to bike to school safely when I am in middle school and high school. Biking to school is a great way to get exercise. If kids bike to school, it means less traffic and less pollution. It is good for our community and great for our environment. We can also use this trail for taking a walk with my family. We can all enjoy the fresh weather without road noise and traffic. So many other cities have done it. I think we can do it too. Thank you for hearing me out. Please vote yes for the Regnart Creek Trail. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Akash, followed by Tim Wee, followed by Brock Carpenter. Welcome, Akash.
Akash already went.
Oh, he did. Okay, you are,
Akash went for me, so I'm just gonna take his position.
okay,
Yeah.
go.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor Scharf and the rest of the City Council. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to have my voice heard. So I'm the president of Tino Bike Club at Cupertino High School, and I would strongly recommend approving this trail so that students can use it for commuting. And I'd like to tell a story of when I was in elementary school. So when I was in elementary school, I wasn't allowed to bike to school like my cousin was, even though we lived 2 houses down, because my parents were afraid that I would get hit by a car and be gravely injured. And at the time, I really despised them for this because I love outdoors and being on my bike. But then later, during middle school, I learned that it was because my cousin got hit by a car and then tore his ACL and broke his femur. So he couldn't play any sports that he wanted to do. So now I actually kind of thank my parents for keeping me indoors to protect me, but I think that cities and communities should make it easier and more safe for students and people who are at higher risk of injury to be away from cars and then also commute to school. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Tim Wee, followed by Brock Carpenter, followed by Neil McClintock. Welcome, Tim.
Okay, I need to bring up a slide show. There we go. Honorable Mayor and Cupertino City Council, my name is Tim Wee. I'm a professional cyclist, professional environmentalist, and bicycle instructor. As part of the Cupertino Safe Routes to School program, I teach kids in Cupertino how to bike safely. I also ride my bike everywhere, at any time, day or night, in any weather. The future of an Earth that can support our kids is in jeopardy due to human-caused climate change. Tonight you have heard from many budding Greta Thunbergs, kids reminding their adults that their future is in jeopardy due to the actions of adults they are taking today. Earlier this year, I bicycled 5,000 miles across the U.S. to talk with people about what we can do to save our world for our kids. Cupertino can think globally and act locally to build a trail to protect kids from being hit by cars, as well as reduce the effects of climate change. If we do not do much, much more to boost walking and biking, this is the future of our kids. Our kids are roadkill today from being hit by cars, and many, many more are roadkill tomorrow as the result of climate change from motor vehicles. This is a picture of one of the thousands of roadkill animals I saw on my ride across the U.S. earlier this year. Cars have killed more U.S. residents than all the wars the U.S. has fought. Think about that. In Silicon Valley, as well as across the U.S., trails are often opposed by 90% of the people who live along them before the trails are built. However, a few years after a trail is built, that flips around and 90% of the people along the trail support the trail. This has been the local experience with the Stevens Creek Trail. Here are some houses with their front yards directly on a big trail in Bloomington, Indiana that I rode on. After trails are put in, many people build paths and staircases from their backyards to such trails in Providence, Rhode Island, and Boston, Massachusetts, and Cape Cod. Trails provide a safe route to school as well as a safer route to our kids' future. Here's a school directly on the trail. So I did my ride for kids to save their lives. I hope you will do your part to save your lives. Otherwise, their blood in red is in your hands. Oh. I'm doing this to save our world and to save our kids. If you want to learn more about what I've been doing, you can go to zerow.org. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Tim. I'll point out that 22 years ago, Tim was leading parent-taught bike rides. That's when I first met him with kids in trailers. And so thank you, Tim, for your efforts. Next, we have Brock Carpenter, followed by Neil McClintock, followed by Janet Onvik. Welcome, Brock.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor Scharf and City Council members. My name is Brock Carpenter, and I'm here tonight to support building the Regnart Creek Trail. I'm a Cupertino resident of 38 years. When I was younger, I used to bike around the city. Now I'm a senior and I walk around the city. And I tell you, it's really tough out there with cars that don't look for people. Other reasons I support building this trail is that we need more time just as people to get out and enjoy the environment. We can't stay in our cubicles and our homes all day long. We need to get out and walk. But without trails to support this, where do we go? We have to drive someplace and be a hazard to somebody else? The Regnart Trail is ideal for this. It's away from cars, including those exiting slope driveways that cross sidewalks that catch pedestrians unawares. According to the Parks and Recreation Master Plan from this year, 80% of Cupertino residents want more trails. We don't have space for more trails. Let's take advantage of the space we have. I urge you to listen to the overwhelming number of residents that want this trail built and decide tonight, without another vote, that Cupertino should get this trail constructed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Neil McClintock, followed by Janet Envik, followed by Soren Spies. Welcome, Neil.
Neil had to return to work. He was here to speak on behalf of Cupertino for All, which supports option B. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Janet Envik, followed by Soren Spies, followed by Rick or Brenda Boyle. Welcome. Is Janet here? Okay, what about Soren?
Soren Spies is here.
Soren Spies, okay, thank you.
Hey, my name is Soren Spies. Thank you, Mayor Scharf and council members. I really appreciate the time that you've put into this, also the staff time and the efforts of everybody involved. I'm just going to give you three little quick pictures. One of them is, so I've been working, I'm an Apple employee. I do not live in Cupertino, but I bicycle in Cupertino all the time. And I have probably, I average driving to work about once per year. So I'm always bicycling to work. And I try to get other people to bicycle to work. And the number one reason they tell me that they don't want to bicycle to work is that they're afraid, right? And there's ways to get around that, but I have made a lot of optimizations in my life to make it possible to bike to work. And not everybody wants to do that level of effort. So the first picture is me biking, trying to find a little wiggle route through Cupertino and coming through Creekside Park and coming across the bridge and finding a little trail and saying, oh, this is great. And then looking straight down at all this valley water right-of-way and thinking, man, I wish that was a trail. This was probably 5 or 8 years ago. And I don't need to bike that way anymore. I've switched offices, but that would absolutely have been my commute for the years that I was working in the western side of Cupertino. So that's, bicycle commuters, you want bicycle commuters instead of cars, I would posit. The second picture is me and my son. We go to church in southern Sunnyvale, and we take the bus and bike across Cupertino to get up to Sunnyvale. And my son is 5, he rides his own bicycle, but there's no way I'm going to let him ride on Cupertino streets. They are too big, and the cars are much too fast. So he rides on the sidewalk. And early on Sunday morning, that is relatively safe because there's not cars coming in and out of driveways. But that is a significant issue, and that is a reason to allow bicycles and pedestrians to be places where they will not have crossing going back and forth. And the third thing to think about is kind of a bigger picture, which is that we have a pretty good transportation network, and you've actually done a great job of improving the bicycle network for confident cyclists like me. But we need to give space for less confident cyclists, for kids to not be locked up in cars, not be locked up in houses, not be locked up in cul-de-sacs. They can actually go places and be independent. And to build a transportation network takes a long time, and this is a small piece of a future transportation network that's more sustainable and more human-focused, and I encourage you to take the step to build that. My slight preference is pavement. My second preference would probably be the thing that can be turned into pavement later, but the trail off the street is a very valuable addition to a future transportation network that is a more sustainable one. So thank you all.
Thank you. Next, we have Rick or Brenda Boyle, followed by Nick Garcia, followed by Beth Garcia.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Thank you for letting us speak. I had a couple questions for Mr. Lee on the proposal, and we don't have to get answers tonight. But when he talked about the concrete wall being cost prohibitive or at least not recommended by the planning committee, why is it okay for Creekside Park entrance and not okay for Lamar? That's one question I have. The second issue I would like to address is the social media blitz that's going around. There have been accusations that the people opposed to the park are berating the Bicycle Coalition Committee. I did attend one of those meetings. I did ask the question when it was brought up by one of the representatives that our housing values would improve or increase. I asked them to please submit supporting documentation for that claim. So if by virtue of asking that question I was berating them, I do apologize and want that to go on public record, but it was just a request. Secondly, there's been a lot of social media talking about the people that abut to the creek, using the creek as their own personal park. I know as a resident that does abut the creek that is not true. If I go to a park, I will be bringing my collapsible Adirondack chair, maybe even my barbecue, and an alcoholic beverage. I don't do any of that behind my fence. And in fact, we've had to recently police an incident that was somehow left off the record by Captain Yuhara when he reported to the city council that there's not been any incidents of break-ins on the creek path and or any other bad behavior. I am here to tell you that is not true. Secondly, if streets are unsafe for walking and on our sidewalks and are already in incorporated paths, then they're really not safe for adults. I urge the council to make better use of this money to improve public safety for all, including the residents who may not use this path and live in the other farther away areas of the city. As a driver, I can confirm I've almost been hit in the car by bicyclists, not practicing good bicycle safety. So I would highly recommend that there be a review of that with those cyclists throughout the city. I also want to say, which is really important, and to a quote that was given earlier that there's only 30 people opposing the trail, I have actually hit the streets and received many signatures, and we have a petition opposing the trail with over 1,000 signatures to date. So I think there's more than 30 people that would like to urge the council to rethink some of these alternatives, and especially the cost. And that's it. I'm going to let my lifetime Cupertino resident speak.
It's all good.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, we have Nick Garcia, followed by Beth Garcia, followed by Linda Wyckoff. Welcome, Nick.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. I'm Nick Garcia. I live on Lamar Drive, and I am opposed to the trail. The trail costs too much money, and it has also too many complicated issues. Now, it's just a narrow trail that goes behind fences of homes, and that's about all it is. But if you really look at it realistically, it's very narrow. I really like listening to the children talking about how much fun it's going to be and how good it is, but it's a narrow little trail that's not going to be much fun to go down, and also it has only access points limited. Okay. Another less costly, complicated solution would be an on-street approach, which would use Blaney, Pacifica, and Lamar Drive to connecting open areas in the park. This approach has always been proposed by Cupertino residents, but instead of the Regnart Creek Trail. But the Regnart Creek Trail feasibility studies, which are biased for the Regnart Creek Trail, always never gave it enough attention. So ask yourself, why? Why? Well, first, the bicycle pedestrian plan identified a loop that has segments that go around Cupertino that connect segments and street connections to have a loop around Cupertino. Okay, the second, the Regnart Creek Trail is identified as part of that loop. So, where do we go from here? Well, the National Bicycle Friendly Community rates national friendly bike communities, and they rate them from bronze to silver. Cupertino's current rating is bronze, okay? The Cupertino Bicycle Pedestrian Committee generated a plan that includes the loop for Cupertino. That loop will be one of the key steps in obtaining a silver rating for Cupertino. So what are we talking about here then? That is why the Regnart Creek Trail is being pushed and other options are not being looked at. So I think we should be looking at the other we haven't looked at the other options. It's getting kind of late, and I don't know if we're going to be able to do that. But I want to say one thing, that the option with regards to an off-street, street loops is still an option, and it can still meet the requirement for the loop so that Cupertino can still get its good rating. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next we have Beth Garcia, followed by Linda Wyckoff, followed by Peggy Jewett. Welcome, Beth.
Thank you. Hello, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Beth Garcia, and I sent you all an email last week, but I don't think you probably had time to read it because you're all so busy.
I read it.
Obviously. You could tell that. Anyhow, I thought I'd read a little bit of what I wrote here, and it's in regard to the Regnart Creek path in the Cupertino Loop Trail. Please consider this carefully, as many good Cupertino residents' peace of mind and happiness are at stake. My husband Nick, who you just saw, and I have lived on Lamar Drive. We're exactly in the middle of from Blaney and East Estates. We've lived there 56 years. That's a long time. So we know quite a bit about Cupertino. We've been proud to be citizens of Cupertino. We thought our city made pretty good decisions and took care of us and our neighbors. But right now, I'm not so sure. We're distressed that what we have enjoyed for all these many years may be compromised by opening up the path along the drainage ditch behind our house, and also 35 other members of the same street. Many other homes in other neighborhoods will also be adversely affected, and I'm not talking about them, but I think some of them are worse than where we are. We know the history of the ditch and can't imagine anything good can really come of this action. If you haven't, well, you've gone there, I'm sure, and seen all this. The ditch and the path and so forth. Just a big, narrow part for a long ways. It's kind of scary, really, when you think about it. We see a lot of kids riding to school, a lot, down our Lamar Drive, and also through Wilson Park. We can see both. We're right in the middle of everything. The kids bike to school in large numbers, and I mean large numbers. Many people walk and jog in the park, and joined by people in wheelchairs and using walkers and so forth. Everybody uses that. They enjoy Wilson Park. Can the proposed path compare to this? I mean, no, it can't. It hardly could. Please leave lovely Wilson Park alone. It's beautiful. People out there all the time. It's wonderful. And bikers. Keep the path closed behind our homes and let peaceful Lamar Drive still be peaceful. And I guess my time is up, but I don't think we can really afford this either, because it's going to take a lot of upkeep. Every year something will have to be done. So thank you for listening.
Can I ask you one question, since you lived there 56 years?
56
Were you
years.
there when the trail was open before?
Yes, we were. When we were there, when we moved, it was only 4 years old, the houses on Lamar. And they had just put in the drainage, the drainage path. I mean, the drainage ditch there, because there was a problem with water. I mean, we have had the water flow up to the top of the creek there. And you go out there, if the council, or what do you call them, water district people drive through there, big ruts out there. That's why we thought, well, maybe it'll be okay with the cement, but if they're not going to do that, it's not good. And also, somebody could fall down there. I mean, we're just thinking of all these things. I mean, I happen to like biking. I happen to like paths, but don't think that's the place for it. So,
Okay,
anyhow,
thank you.
If you could think about it. Thank you very much.
Okay, next is Linda Wyckoff, followed by Peggy Jewett, followed by Louis Bueller. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you. Okay. I will be pleased to have the opportunity to present our petitions to you. We, as you heard before, we now have 1,000 plus signatures. 950 of them are Cupertino residents, and the remainder reside mostly within the school district boundaries. That's an additional 550 signatures we gained in 3 weeks. It was no small feat. Needless to say, it's tougher to gain supporters when your cause requires a thorough explanation to the uninitiated as to why this particular trail is a really bad idea. Of course, the easy default position for most residents tends to be pro-trail. Additionally, I'd like to discuss the concept of injury liability. I've taken a random sampling of legal findings in California over the past 15 years regarding bike path liability. In the mid-2000s, cyclists were putting pressure on cities to incur liability for use of off-street trails. It was very important to them. As it turns out, cities balked at the prospect of building off-street trails if they incurred the additional burden of liability. I found liability to be an issue only when the cyclist is on a public street. They can sue the city, but if injured on an off-street path, but almost certainly they will not prevail, even with design flaws. Cyclists are still fighting for off-street bike paths. Are they aware that the process they are working to absolve the city of any liability? But there is one important catch here. Studies have shown that the most dangerous place on a path is when it intersects with a public road. Who's liable then? It's not the water district, it's not their property. It's now the city's liability. When you take into consideration the limited sight distance at these mid-block crossings, we are now introducing new potential liability. In closing, let's concentrate on bike trails and infrastructure improvement that address key problem areas, especially near schools, in high accident locales, and where we lack sidewalks. I ask the city, please, spend our limited funds wisely to address problem areas, giving preference to projects that address specific existing trouble spots and also lack significant controversy. Refrain from projects that alienate huge swaths of your neighbors, most of whom are also voters. Thank you.
Let me ask you a question. The petition. So, is that collected online, or do you have the address and names of the petitioners?
I think we have about 120 that were collected online. We have the addresses here.
So for about 1,000, you have their names and
1,000
addresses?
plus. What was that?
So for 1,000 plus, you have their names and addresses?
Yes, we do.
I said, just if you let me explain, I set up the online website for the petition. So the names and their full names and addresses are mandatory items for their verification. We are not releasing those addresses for privacy reasons, but that's the only way we can validate their residence as well as validate their identification. So that yes, for every signatures we do have their addresses, full name as in lieu of their signatures. Unlike email address that other parties use, the email it is all well known. You can create a million different emails if you want. But addresses it's kind of one validation, one form of validation. It is validated, cross-validated for their residents.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
so
thank you. So
Okay.
950 Cupertino residents,
Yes,
and the
and
rest
then
are
about
in the district. Thank you.
950 Cupertino resident and about some 52, I think, by the latest count. They are within the Cupertino and Fremont Union High School district residents.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Peggy Jewett, followed by Louis Bueller, followed by Andre and Ann Cadeau. Welcome, Peggy.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Scharf, and thank you to all the council members who are here persevering with us to hear us out. I live on De Palma Lane and have lived there for more than 30 years. And at 65% plan, we still don't have any plan that addresses the fact that De Palma Lane at my section is a private road and likely to be more attractive as a thoroughfare from the Lozano and De Palma Lane than going up the hill and behind the creek to get off your bike to cross Blaney. So I still think there's a lot of gaps in this plan. But I'm actually here to propose that we look at alternate 4 and 5, because those two alternates are not near as expensive. As a matter of fact, it's about $300,000 to do both of those and improve the roads that everybody will have to travel on part of the year, because the Regnart Creek Trail will not be available from dusk till dawn, and it's not going to be lit, and that means that a large part of the year, kids won't be able to use it to go to school. They'll have to be on our city streets. So I'm supporting Complete Streets, which is a program that has designs for the roads to handle all traffic, both walkers, riders, people in wheelchairs. And Complete Streets program is a national program for improving transportation everywhere. So please consider alternates 4 and 5.
Excuse me, so the staff says De Palma Lane residents didn't meet with them? Did you guys meet with the staff? Did you propose options for mitigation?
Yeah, I did meet with him. They don't have any options to keep people off the street. I happen to own the street. The big part of the cul-de-sac is my property. And my insurance agent has told me that I will be liable for any accidents that happen in that part of the street. And that's the same case for all of my neighbors. They also own parts of the street and would be liable. But no one is addressing this fact that we have a personal liability for riders and walkers who decide to go down the street instead of continue on the trail. And that's a big issue.
I guess I confused that with Lozano. Okay. So De Palma is not the front yard.
Okay, so there's an extension that was named De Palma Lane that has some frontage on the creek, but the original De Palma Lane is 7 houses, I believe, with ownership of the lane. So part of our property was carved out to make that private road.
Okay. All right, thank you. Next is Louis Bueller, followed by Andre and Ann Cadeau, and followed by Mark Arsenault. Welcome, Louis.
Hello, Mayor Scharf and members of the council. My name is Luis Bueller. I am a 30-plus year resident of Cupertino, and I want to thank the staff for conducting the workshop. It gave us a chance to actually go walk the trail and see what this is all about, and I think it was very clear for me after walking the trail that this is not about constructing a brand new trail. This is about an existing trail that actually exists on public land. So the real question, I think, is who's going to get to use this trail? Who is going to get to use this community asset? Is it going to be limited to a smaller group of community residents, or is it the access going to be opened up so that many of our residents can enjoy the benefits of an existing trail? I believe the answer is this is a public access. It should be made accessible to a wide cross-section of our community. So I urge you to pick a cost-effective solution and move forward with it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, I have Andre and An Cadeau. I apologize if I mispronounced that. Followed by Mark Arsenault, followed by Kati Lahia. What? Okay, is Andre here? Okay, and is Mark here? No. Okay. And Katie is not here? Oh, you are? Okay, sorry. Katie, followed by J.R. Fruin, followed by Jean Bedord. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and esteemed City Council members. After being in this meeting for several hours, I pretty much scrapped the speech I wrote, so now I'm just ad-libbing it. I am a 15-year resident of the Fairgrove neighborhood here in Cupertino, mother of 2 high schoolers, and I have been the Safe Routes to School parent volunteer for Hyde Middle School for the past 3 years until last spring. As the Safe Routes volunteer, it is my experience that people will not change their traffic patterns just by us cajoling and kindly requesting them to do so and reasoning with them. It needs to be forced upon people. You want less car traffic, make the car traffic less convenient, and make walking and biking safer and more enjoyable option, and people will choose it. I also have 30-year experience living in a country with extensive separated bike and pedestrian lanes, trails. So I know what's missing from here. I also know that these trails are not a safety or privacy issue. In Finland, where I come from, people don't have fenced off yards. They have a couple of bushes marking the property lines. And amazingly, nobody's jumping off the trails into people's yards. They just aren't. Also, the trails are not fenced off from streets, from creeks, from rivers. If somebody wants to bicycle into the river, that's their prerogative. They may do so. Usually people don't. So, I used to bike for 150K a week when I was in Finland. I moved to the United States in '97. My bicycling went to 0 within 3 months. It was awful. The car drivers did not see me. They simply just don't see me. And I cannot provide my kids the same freedom that I was able to enjoy in my home country. The city has great plans on changing the traffic patterns and making the city more accessible for every resident, not just car owners. So I urge you to seize every opportunity there is to make a separate trail for bikers and pedestrians, because the difference is huge. I know it. I've been biking. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have J.R. Fruin, followed by Jean Bedord, followed by John O'Banks. Welcome, J.R.
Good evening, Mayor Scharf, members of the City Council. My name is J.R. Fruin. I am a lifelong resident of this community. I have lived here for 40 years. The Regnart Creek Trail, I'm sure, presents one of those tough decisions that demands that you balance the interests of different groups of residents, and I'm sure that few of us here tonight would envy you the task that you have. Lots of people took special time and care to come here. One of them was my friend Neil, who unfortunately had to leave. You've stood where they stand now. And so as you listen to them, I hope that you'll recall how many of you ran for your current seats because you felt that this council's actions in the past didn't reflect what the community wanted. Many of you incorporated that message into your campaigns and your philosophy of government. For example, Councilmember Willie, you've said on more than one occasion that you would vote for whatever the majority of Cupertino residents want. So as you listen to the testimony tonight and see the diversity of the people who are speaking before you, I hope that you'll all keep that experience and those positions in mind. The community is here, They brave this podium to tell you what they favor, and I hope you'll vote accordingly. Now, for me, I wholeheartedly support the Regnart Creek Trail, given the division that development issues in general tend to provoke in this community. It's nice to see a project with support from people who don't often see eye to eye. When I was standing in the back, Planning Commissioner Moore happened to call my attention to herself and said, "Oh, it's nice to be on the same side for a change." Miracles do happen. As someone who walks or runs in the neighborhood near the trail almost daily, I see this trail as a wonderful new facility that will make pedestrian access to city amenities better, safer, and more enjoyable. And so I emphasize these points because alternatives 4 and 5, as presented to you, do little to nothing to improve Cupertino's walkability. Instead, they consign pedestrians to existing sidewalks and pathways. So I think you'll agree that that's not really a pedestrian project. I therefore urge you to support completing the trail design and selecting option B. I think it provides substantial improvements to bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure while still respecting the requests of immediately adjacent neighbors for privacy and security. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Jean Bedord, followed by, if I'm reading this right, John O'Banks, followed by Deepa Mahendrakar. Welcome, Jean.
Good evening, Mayor Scharf and council members. My name is Jean Bedord, and I live in Cupertino. I am here to urge you to move the Regnart Creek Trail Library Trail to 100% design. By way of background, I worked for the National Park Service for several years and became an advocate for access to public lands. Land that is owned by the taxpayers should be accessible to residents, not just adjacent property owners. Admittedly, dealing with the public can be challenging, as I know from my Park Service experience as well as the library. However, the concerns I've heard can be managed by your very capable staff. They're already dealing with public access to our many parks, and this is no different. Furthermore, construction of this trail should be the same standard as the Stevens Creek Trail at Blackberry Farm, meaning that it is ADA compliant. This ensures the broadest possible access for our over 60,000 residents. We are an aging community, much as we might not like to admit it. But with 2/3 of our population is over the age of 50, and there is a retirement community within 2 blocks of this trailhead. Plus, there's over 20,000 Apple employees in our city, many within walking and biking distance, who would enjoy a trail for lunchtime walks and runs. Costs have been an excuse for blocking this trail. However, the Blackberry Farm Trail cost the city less than $500,000, since the city was able to get $2.8 million in outside funding to complete the trail. Option B at $3.4 million is comparable. Why wouldn't you provide an equivalent trail in another part of Cupertino? I urge you to move ahead with the 100% design phase, which allows staff to identify outside funding and make option B more affordable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have John O'Banks, followed by Deepa, followed by Lars Thompson. Welcome.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Jano Banks, and I'm a 22-year resident of Cupertino, and I live on Lamar Court. I wanted to say on record here that I'm for the Regnart Creek Trail, and I'm also for the residents along the trail. How can that be? Well, I happen to be a resident along that trail. 22 years ago, we had no trail nor bridge behind my house on Lamar Court. I happen to be the house that's on the corner, bordering right where that bridge is. And 22 years ago, I was a NIMBY and proud of it. It was really troublesome to see that that was going in behind my house, which I had just purchased with all the money I had in the world, only a little bit before that. It turns out that you can actually work with the city. Very reasonable people, it turns out. And we were able, as a group of residents, to work with the city and come up with solutions that were different than the original plan. I would say 65% plan, understand it. You know what? There's a lot of plans still left in 35% that can also be amended, fixed, talked about, and improved as per the residents might need. And I encourage everyone here to work with the city on that. Bottom line is, this wall and bridge behind our house has been a huge asset for us, for our kids who've grown up here. They're now all out of the house, we're empty nesters. But they walked to the park without ever going on a street. And can you imagine how comforting that was to us who lived on the cul-de-sac right next door? So I highly recommend that we go ahead and do this plan, but let's work together as residents who will get affected by it. I would say that option B looks very good, but I would also encourage you to consider option A. $3.4 million or so is what option B is. I know it's another $1 million or so for the option A, but think about it. A concrete wall goes about 100 years. The wood fences will go about 20. So think of the investment that you could make in Cupertino and for these residents. So I highly encourage you to consider that.
Thank you, and sorry for mispronouncing your name.
Hi.
I
think
the Vice Mayor has a question.
I visited your home.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for coming over.
So you do have the concrete wall behind your house.
Yes, I do.
And as I understand, that concrete wall at the time was built on water district land. In fact, it's 1 foot, you told me, into their land. So you
Yeah, that's
kind
true.
of gained 1 extra foot in your backyard.
Yeah, wasn't that nice?
Yes, but the residents today, they don't have that luxury because the water district today would not even give in 1 inch of their land.
Yeah. Well, it would be in the
So-
same place. It would be in the same place.
Okay,
I
so I
expected-
just want to understand, okay, so you are saying that wooden fence only lasts about 10 years?
20 years, I said.
20 years, okay. But as I understand, our city's agreement with the residents is, in the future, after 20 years, residents will be responsible for replacing their fence from now on.
Yeah,
The
that's-
city
that's
would
what-
only offer to give them new fence if they sign on today. So they don't get the same deal as you do.
That's why I'm recommending you consider option A.
And how tall is your brick wall?
It's not brick, it's concrete.
It's a concrete wall. How tall is that?
It is 8 feet, I believe, total. And on our side, since we are a little bit higher, it only goes up 6 feet.
Okay. And it's lighted. There are electricity going through that wall.
That was the original motivation for the wall, because back then it was required that there was lighting. I gathered the rules today do not require lighting, and that was actually the key thing that allowed the wall to be chosen. It was actually more cost effective than other lighting methods that were being considered. It's a shorter
Okay.
section of wall.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next is Deepa, followed by Lars Thompson, followed by Matthew Widman. Welcome, Deepa.
Thank you. I have a display. Good evening, City Council members and citizens of Cupertino. I have a Boy Scout at home. Proudly, I'm the mother of an Eagle Scout now. And as part of his merit requirements, I was searching for a Cupertino organizational chart, the city's organizational chart, and I came across this one. It's kind of back to basics for me. It tells me, and it tells all citizens over here, what the city, the elected and nominated and appointed members of the city administration should really be looking at and doing. And they should be listening to the citizens of Cupertino. This is a complex issue, no doubt about that. But it helps to kind of not cloud the overall issues with too many back and forth, and to look at what is it whether it is helping the citizens, whether it is something majority of the people are asking for or not. Cupertino is prime property, there's no doubt about it. Land is at a premium. Public land is really, really at a premium, right? And public land is really, really, whatever land we have, we're going to have to get very creative about how we are going to share. A foot here, a foot there, everything is going to be fought for. I am very much in favor of opening up the public parks and trails especially for children. Cupertino is a city of children. It has the best school district, and people come here because of the school district with their little children, right? They want to be able to provide them safe biking paths. I'll always vote for that. How the administration make it happen? Yes, that's complex. There's no doubt about it, right? And that's part of the reason why we have the administration to solve through those issues, to make those issues happen, not to include them, not to complicate them, but to listen to what the citizens are asking for and make it happen. Budget issues and everything all have to be directed towards what citizens would like to see happen. I don't have more to say. I am definitely in favor of opening up this trail for kids to bike, for people to walk and enjoy. Shared resources are limited. We have to get creative, and I would appreciate if somehow with some creativity, with the right options, you could solve this issue for the citizens who are asking for it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, and we'll take a break at 9:45. We have Lars Thompson, Bill Rankin, and Matthew Widman. Welcome, Lars.
Good evening, Mayor Scharf and council members. My name is Lars Thompson. I own Trailhead Cyclery over here on Stevens Creek Boulevard by Torrey. I was super excited to move into Cupertino a year and a half ago. It's wonderful. I came out of 21 years of owning my shop in San Jose. An amazing thing has happened at my new shop. It's incredible how many bicycles come in mangled. Just today, another one. Rear tire folded in half. Kid walking, holding his head. Very concerned adult saying, I need to take care of this young man's bike. We've just been to the hospital. He checks out okay, but I want to make sure his bicycle is taken care of. This happens on the daily. It's incredible. My staff comes up and says, man, that's crazy how many bikes we're seeing now that are being hit by cars. And I'm very connected with local schools. I feel like I'm trying my best to help with bike rodeos, and the bicycle fall festival coming we'll be at, and I was at the Cupertino Fall Festival at the Veterans Park, and people want their kids to ride, but they're deathly afraid, and they're really scared of riding on the streets. And I think we can all vouch that the driving in Cupertino is not A+. Okay? Right? It's kind of not. It's a little bit scary. So imagine being young and not really aware of your surroundings like some of the seasoned adults that ride to Cupertino and ride through Cupertino. I'm a seasoned adult, and I'm oftentimes very concerned. So any opportunity to get into Class 1 cycling removed from the streets is going to improve the connectivity of the city, and every opportunity we can get, I think, is going to improve the health of the city. So if I could encourage you all to vote for approval and moving forward with a plan. I really like Plan B, although, you know, he makes a good case for A because of the longevity of the cement wall. I would really appreciate it, and I'm sure all of the parents here would too, and my staff that rides to work, and myself. So much appreciated. Thank you all.
Wow, thank you. Bill Rankin, followed by Matthew Widman, followed by Joel Wolf. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Scharf and City Council members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here tonight. My name is Bill Rankin, and I'm president of Save Our Trails, a Santa Clara County's trails advocacy group. We are in favor of trails as linear parks for active recreation and commute corridors. I am here to urge that you vote yes tonight to approve the Regnart Trail. This plan will allow children, adults, and seniors the ability to enjoy several local parks without having to get in a car to drive to them. Creekside Park, Wilson Park, and the library fields are all used by many residents for recreation and exercise. The trail would make them more accessible and useful for everyone. To give just a few examples, residents who enjoy shopping at the farmers market in Creekside Park on Friday mornings could walk or bike from their homes near city centers. Adults and children who play cricket in the library field could walk or bike from further away and avoid the hard-to-find parking at Civic Center. Kids who play soccer or baseball at Wilson Park could walk along the trail to their games and practices. Residents who like to run or walk for exercise can enjoy a mile-long path with only 2 street crossings. They could even continue into Creekside Park for an extra-length loop trail. Neighbors participating in community events held at Civic Center, such as the very popular Earth Day Festival, wouldn't have to drive there. They could just walk. For these and many other reasons, I support building this trail. I ask that the City Council tonight vote yes to build this trail. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you. Next we have Matthew, followed by Joel Wolf, followed by Paolo Sacchetto. Welcome, Matthew.
Good evening, Mayor Scharf and council members. I'm a bike commuter and I live and work in Cupertino. And I just want to highlight that this is an east-west trail predominantly. And my commute goes east-west as well. Most of the east-west routes are on major arterials, Homestead Road, Stevens Creek, El Camino. And they're very dangerous because they're on the street. They're class 2 or class 3 road bike paths. And in the morning and at night, there's a lot of glare from the sun. A lot of drivers don't see you on the bike lane. And you're sharing road with a lot of students. So when we have the walker wheel moments for students, there's lots of bicyclists, and it gets pretty dangerous. Like going down Homestead Road, near Homestead High, there's lots of congestion there. So this trail, I'd love to make this part of my commute along Cupertino. Right now, getting back, I take it in the morning. I take Homestead Road in the morning at around 7 a.m. and it's fine. But getting back, I have to go through Sunnyvale. I avoid Cupertino completely. Sunnyvale has a lot more quieter streets. It has a pedestrian bridge over 85. There's the West Valley School that gets over Stevens Creek. So I'd love to take a more southerly route through Cupertino back to where I live. And I hope to make this trail part of my commute in the future. And I urge you to vote yes on this trail. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Next is Joel Wolf, followed by Paolo, followed by Rick Austin, and then we will take a break. We've been going for 3 hours. Welcome, Joel. Is Joel here? Okay, welcome, Paolo. Did I pronounce your name right? Or you're not here? Okay, how about Rick Austin?
This is the live mic right here.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor Scharf and members of the council. Thank you for your patience and thank for the people who are sticking it out as well. My name is Rick Austin, and first and foremost, I am not a resident of Cupertino. I'm a resident of San Jose. However, I am an advocate countywide for trails, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Regnart Creek Trail tonight. Also, and I will say this full, I, as of 3 years ago, retired from a 23-year career with the Santa Clara Valley Water District, where I spent the entirety of my career basically hiking the county's creeks and watercourses. I was a vegetation specialist responsible for creek restoration and for vegetation maintenance along basically all of the watercourses throughout the county, and I spent quite a bit of time along the creek in question tonight. So in that 23 years, I had a lot of opportunity to see kind of what went on our local creeks. Also, I was and still am an active cycle commuter who has mostly used city streets. but that is basically due to the lack of access and connectivity between a lot of the areas. The creeks and watercourses of the county are made for trails, and there's been a recognition of that. I'm lucky enough right now to live on 2 blocks from the Los Gatos Creek Trail, which, by the way, has added immense value to my property to my property. I moved into my home because of that access. My home is appreciated in value because of that, and every home that is sold in the neighborhood mentions that as an amenity. So I realize the full benefit of living in proximity to those types of natural amenities. But I wanted to speak really quickly about a perspective that no one has really mentioned tonight. I was fortunate enough to spend my days walking the creeks and to be able to interact with nature in one of the most densely urbanized areas in this part of the state. We are a population that lives pretty tightly packed. We see concrete, we see cars, we live in our cars. The opportunity to get out, to walk a trail, to walk your dog, to take a hike, to get down up close and personal with nature, to see ducklings in the spring, to see a merganser, to see wild blackberries and things like that fruiting around here. Those are things that our children, they deserve as well as, the residents who've lived here for so long. I'm sure they do appreciate being able to be around that. But, and I will stay away from my former role as a water district employee, but I'm here as a San Jose resident. However, I pay property taxes that support the Santa Clara Valley Water District's properties countywide. So these amenities do lend themselves to more than just strict city boundaries.
Okay, please finish up.
And I would appreciate consideration of these points. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. So we've been going for about 3 hours now, so we will take, it's 9:43. We'll reconvene at 9:48 and continue with the rest of the cards. Thank you.